The ladies looked at Stephanie with disdain. They did not understand at all why she came, and why she was standing alone. They said that she came to meet the great magician. It's funny that anyone would pay attention to her. But they were completely confused when a magician walked towards Stephania. Stephania was very scared. She looked shocked. Shaniel Crowley reached out and gently pulled her cheek. He smiled and said she was silly. This is a story about the beloved of the continent's strongest mage. But unfortunately, her fate is already sealed. When Stephania was younger, she was asked why she was bothering when she needed to get closer. Everyone consoled Angelica, assuring her that everything would be fine and that there was no need to cry. But the younger sister continued to cry, and Stephania approached her. She said that she brought hot milk with honey. Angelica pushed the mug away and said she didn't want it. The mother explained that Angelica was not feeling well and that Stephanie should not irritate her. Stephania apologized, but Angelica told her to just clean up after herself and leave. Mother asked Angelica to tell what happened to her. Angelica screamed that her stomach hurt very badly. The mother hugged her and asked for forgiveness, saying that it was because of her that Angelica was born in such a body. Meanwhile, Stephania said that she would go and cook dinner. She understood that if she told her mother that she remembered her past life, she would decide that she was crazy. Stephania understood that no one would believe such fairy tales. After all, she was reborn as one of the characters in the novel, the beloved of the great magicians. The story tells about a girl with an unhappy fate who meets a magician who helps restore her homeland and its former glory with the help of power. The name of the main character is Angelica Lana Belest. That is her younger sister. It's ironic to be reborn as the main character's older sister. Stephania was definitely in the world of that very novel, and she remembered the plot clearly. They are descendants of the royal family of the eastern country of Isabel. But unfortunately, they had to leave their homeland and settle in this villa. Angelica, who has had poor health since childhood, also lives here. And their mother, hyper-caring and anxious, blows the dust off her. Stephania is also with them. After all, they are refugees from another country. They have no position, no connections, no money. Although she has been living in this world for a long time, but she still can't remember what role Stephania played in the book's plot. Perhaps she was just an ordinary secondary character, whose fate remained unrevealed, a forgotten, unloved eldest daughter, who carried out other people's orders. Every day she regrets that God gave her a second life. After all, everything here is like hell only on earth. Ash was delivering orders. He came up and politely apologized for the wait. Their pork chop with vegetables was ready. The gentleman expressed his gratitude and told Ash to bring another glass of beer. Boris replied that he would bring everything now, and added that another beer was already ready, as well as snacks for the guests. Their family has no money at all, so Stephania has to work in the evenings. To hide her identity, she pretends to be a young man named Ash and works as a waiter in a bar. It's quite a popular place, so the pay is good. But she has to work every day, and she gets very tired. But at least here, Stephania can escape from reality, where no one needs her as the eldest daughter. One of the gentlemen noticed that Ash looked too pale and asked if everything was okay with him. The guy replied that he was fine, but the man thought that this was not true at all. His face was too pale, which suggested that he was unwell. His arms were like skin and bones, too frail for his age. The man said that they had a doctor there and offered to examine the child. Another visitor echoed this. Ash works here every day, he needs a rest. Otherwise, such work could drive him to the grave. Ash said again that he was really fine, but then he started coughing. He coughed up blood, apologized, and suggested that he probably just had a cold. When they saw blood on his hands, they immediately told the doctor to examine him immediately. Ash objected, arguing that it was not necessary, but he was persuaded that the examination would be free and that he should not be stubborn. The guy apologized again, saying that he knew he needed to rest more, but that he really didn't have any pain. He added that men were simply exaggerating, but the doctor disagreed. He was surprised that Ash was still standing on his feet. All the symptoms pointed to Jug's disease. This is a very rare and incurable disease. At that moment, Stephania realized that she knew what was going on. The worst thing about this disease is that the body gradually stops functioning. And then she remembered everything. The doctor said that he was aware of his illness, but a cure for it had not yet been found. Therefore, unfortunately, a painful and terrible death awaits him. At that moment, Stephania realized why she didn't remember anything about her fate. This is all because in the novel itself, she was only mentioned in passing. Then Ash decided to check with the doctor how much time he had left. The doctor was silent at first, but then noted that judging by the symptoms, he had almost no time left. The girl wanted to know more precisely, so she asked him again to say specifically. Then the doctor replied that if he was lucky, he could live for another 3 months. His condition indicated the final stage of the disease, so death could have occurred earlier. As stated, there is no cure for this disease due to its rarity. Therefore, he is powerless to help in any way, and he is sincerely sorry. The doctor apologized, but Ash approached him and asked him to just raise his head. There is no need to worry so much, because everything will be fine with him. The doctor noted with confusion that he couldn't be fine. He was in the last stage of the disease. But when he finally looked up, he saw Ash smiling and saying that everything was indeed okay. It was hard to let her leave work, but Stefania was finally able to be alone. Everyone got drunk and began to mourn her imminent death. Milana could never imagine that someone would worry about her so much. It's ironic because they knew almost nothing about her. But they were more worried than her own family. Suddenly, she heard strange sounds and noticed 2 children in front of her. One of the boys angrily asked why she was hanging around there. And then he looked at her more closely and decided that she must be a servant. The girl noticed that Stefania looked miserable. She smelled of fumes, and it was just awful. Who would have thought that such rabble lives in such a luxurious house? And indeed, everyone disappeared somewhere. And today, strange things started happening at the villa. Their things simply disappeared. As if someone had stolen them, Stefania just smiled at the children and asked what they were doing at the gate of her house so late at night. They replied that it was none of her business since she was just a commoner. Then she remarked that in that case she would probably leave. But the boy told her to stop, and the girl warned her. If she told anyone that she saw them here, then she will personally take care of getting rid of her and her entire family. A few minutes later, Stefania finally entered the house. She shouted that she was back and saw her sister, who said that she was late. Stefania asked Angelica why she still wasn't sleeping. Angelica said that her little sister was suffering from illness, lying in this backwater, like in a cage, and Stefania dared to walk around bars and have fun without remorse. Stefania was shocked and tried to explain that Angelica had misunderstood everything. Angelica continued that it seemed that the very thought of such a miserable existence was burdensome to her little sister. Being born with these cursed eyes is the real reason they had to flee their home kingdom. The gist of it was that both sisters were born with cursed eyes, while all members of the royal family had blue eyes. No one was happy about their birth. And then Angelica admitted that she envied her sister. Stefania may not have been born with blue eyes, but she was a healthy and strong girl, able to go out whenever she wanted. But Angelica is weak and always in pain. But she understands why Stefania was lucky to be born like this, while she is destined to rot within these walls. Stefania remained silent. Angelica was wrong. After all, in the novel, the main character was precisely she, Angelica, the princess of an eastern country who lost her older sister to an incurable disease. After Stephanie's death, according to the plot, Angelica changed greatly. The loss deeply affected her worldview. In the novel, she became completely different. Now they seem to have reached the very beginning of the story where her sister dies. Latushka approached them and asked why Angelica was still not sleeping. She noticed that the house was getting cold at night and that it was high time for Angelique to be in bed. The girl turned away and demonstratively walked away. Stefania turned to her mother, who followed Angelica. The woman turned around and asked what she wanted from her. Her face was indifferent. Stefania said there was something she wanted to discuss with her. The mother sighed heavily and replied that she should wait until tomorrow morning. She was very tired, but Stefania thought she wanted to say something important. The mother became angry and told Stephanie to stop being selfish and let her sleep. 3 months have passed, and she still cannot believe that she will soon die again. However, it is inevitable. Since she is destined to die a second time, she would like to see Mr. Cheniel at least once before that. The great magician Cheniel Crowley is her favorite character from the novel, and Angelica's future husband. She really wants to see him in person, even if only for a moment. All she misses is looking at his face, smelling his scent, watching the expression in his eyes. This will help her find peace forever. Suddenly, she stood up and thought. She began to wonder what could possibly stop her from meeting him right now. After all, she literally lives in the world of this novel. Then she shook her head and made a firm decision. Since she is destined to die, she will fulfill her cherished wish. So she will definitely meet the master. The husband went to the same doctor who had already examined Stefania earlier. The doctor was surprised to see her and could not understand who was standing in front of him. But looking closer at her face, he recognized Ash. Stefania said she came to thank him and say goodbye. The doctor asked where she was going to go. The girl replied that she was heading to the Central Lands. Then the doctor thought about it and suggested that perhaps there were doctors there working on a cure for Jug's disease. However, in her condition, travel could be extremely dangerous. Stefania smiled weakly and said that there was no need to worry about her because this was her personal last and selfish wish before the inevitable end. The doctor noted that if she had decided so, then no one had the right to stop her. She agreed to this, thanked him, and bowing expressed her gratitude for him telling her the truth. The gentleman only added that he was a doctor, and this was his duty. Stefania still said that she was very grateful to him. He noticed that the guys at the gate and from the bar would probably want to say goodbye to her. The girl quietly said that she would also like to say goodbye, but time was running out. As Stefania turned and walked away, the doctor addressed her one last time, saying that he didn't know if they would be able to meet again, but he asks her to fight for her life until her last breath. The girl gave her name as Stefania Lena Belest, and I really asked him to remember this name. After bowing, she began to leave, and the doctor was shocked. She is a member of the royal family, the one who was of no use to anyone since birth. The irony of her fate is that her current life is no different from her previous one. A sick younger sister, a mother immersed in overprotection, and she, the older sister, was obliged to work every day to provide her sister with expensive treatment. All this reminded her of some strange déjà vu. In her past life, she died from constant overwork. Now she is being killed by an incurable disease, and she cannot understand why she is so unlucky. Both then and now, everything is like complete hell. But he exists in this world. Cheniel Crowley. Then she died without knowing life, trying only for others. But now she wants to devote the rest of her days to fulfilling her own desires. After some time, Mr. Cooker reported that they had already arrived. And so, Stefania saw for the first time the homeland of the magicians, the Central Lands. Here lives Mr. Cheniel, and among the locals are people from the Eastern Kingdom to which Isabella belonged. But in addition to the four kingdoms, a great land of magicians and sorcerers arose. Its name is the Central Lands. Since this is the homeland of all magicians, the people here are proud, arrogant by nature, and do not treat outsiders well. Therefore, it is better not to attract unnecessary attention to yourself. We need to act according to the original plan. Stefania suddenly turned around and heard a scream. She had previously thought that the author was exaggerating when he said that the inhabitants of magical lands were arrogant, but then she saw it with her own eyes. The man was loudly indignant, insisting that he had an appointment for today, but now he was being thrown out because a line had formed. We need to leave immediately, otherwise the magic might affect her too. Turning around again, Stefania noticed the other guy also starting to cast spells. Perhaps it was fate that brought her here, since she is still alive. Suddenly, someone came up and asked if everything was okay, calling her Milady. The girl turned around, but didn't see anyone, so she began to look around. At that moment, she heard a voice from below. The guy said he was below, and looking down, she saw a young boy. He was very nice. The boy noticed that the lady must be ordinary and said that it was dangerous for her to be here alone. Therefore, he advised her to leave here as soon as possible. Norms are people who don't have magic. Stefania hasn't done anything yet, and he already realized that she doesn't have powers. The boy noticed with irritation that everyone was tired of adult magicians. They were always arguing over trifles. Stefania thought he must be a local and might know how to stop them. She was worried that the magicians could destroy the entire city. But the boy calmly said that the lady should not worry. As long as there was a master in the city, this would not happen. She didn't quite understand what he meant. And then turning around sharply, she saw a figure in the sky. The man hit both mages. They were furious, not understanding who dared to interfere in their dispute. But when they looked up, the master himself stood before them. The men realized that they were finished. The gentleman asked how they dared to disturb the peace. The magicians immediately began to justify themselves, saying that they had simply argued and did not want to disturb him. However, The master used magic against them again and hit them again. Stefania was stunned, and the boy thought she was scared. But Milady cried with happiness. Her favorite character turned out to be as incredible as she imagined him. She saw Mr. Chenille with her own eyes and was completely delighted. But she didn't want to think that he would leave now, so she ran after him begging him to stop. He noticed her, and the girl immediately began to apologize for disturbing him. She then confessed that she loved him with all her heart. Chenille was in complete shock. When he heard this, he didn't even know how to react to it. As soon as she saw his beautiful face, unexpected words burst from Stefania's lips. He turned around, and Stefania tried to stop him. But a second later, she stopped herself, realizing that she shouldn't do this. Meanwhile, Yuchi came up from behind, not understanding what was happening and why everything was so tense. Stefania apologized, saying that he had to see something strange, but more importantly, she never thanked him for saving her. She explained that she was wondering what his name was, and the guy smiled and said that he was always happy to help her. He introduced himself. Yuchi, that's his name. He also became interested in the name of the lady. Stefania answered, and then Yuchi asked if he could just call her Fanny. The lady gave her permission, and Yuchi was genuinely happy, smiling broadly. There was so much joy in his voice, and it seemed like such a small thing, but Stefania even envied him a little. Yuchi guessed that Stefania must have come to the Central Lands for a magical request. The lady confirmed it. There are two types of people in this world: ordinary people incapable of magic and magicians. Previously, ordinary people were afraid of the power of magicians, which is why the latter created a service: magic requests. These are requests for help that come from all over the continent to the lands of the mages, and the mages are obliged to fulfill them. Stefania wanted to take advantage of this to possibly meet Chenille, and Yuchi said that he would then be willing to fulfill her request. Although you wouldn't know it from looking at him, he is quite a powerful mage. The girl apologized and clarified that she had come to these lands to ask Chenille personally for help. Yuchi asked again in surprise and noted that she most likely wouldn't succeed, and Stefania asked in fear why. The guy explained that in fact there is no guarantee that her request will be considered by the master himself. First, it will be examined by special services. They determine the complexity of the task and only then appoint a magician. The master himself takes on only the most difficult cases. Stefania was upset, and Yuchi said that he could listen to her. Depending on the request, he would be able to say whether the master would take on her. The girl realized that nothing would work out, and her mood worsened. She did not even suspect that such a system was in effect in these lands. Her entire plan to meet with Chenille fell apart in a matter of seconds. Yuchi noticed that the lady looked sad, and said that perhaps she wanted to marry the master. Stefania was scared, and the guy asked if he was wrong in his assumptions. She quickly explained that he had got it all wrong. She wasn't planning on marrying him, she just admired him. Stefania also noted that she didn't need anything else, and then Yuchi noted that he just wanted to apologize for such a ridiculous assumption. He added that they really do often receive such requests, since the novel stated that many people dreamed of marrying him. If she just wants a date, he can help her with that. The girl was both delighted and shocked. Stefania asked how he was going to arrange this, and Yuchi said that he could organize everything, although according to the rules, it was not possible to do so. He added that they could keep it all a secret. Stefania said that was a great idea, and then Yuchi noted that they would go to meet the master. With the help of magic, he lifted her things, and the lady was amazed. Yuchi took the broom and invited Stefania to sit next to him, and then he advised her to hold on tight. After a short while, she found herself right in front of Master Chenille. Of course she dreamed of meeting him, but definitely not in such a setting. Yuchi simply led her to the throne room and quickly disappeared. But now the girl understood that there was nowhere to retreat. She would have to talk to him. Since she's here, that means she'll have to talk to him. Stefania was grateful to him for paying attention to her, despite his busy schedule. She wanted to address him as a mage of the Central Lands. She begged him to let her stay in the castle for 2 months. Chenille pointed out that such a joke could cost her her life, and asked if she realized it. The girl herself knew that this was not a fiction. If she was careless with her words, he might actually kill her. That's the kind of man Chenille Crowley is. Stefania, of course, would not mind falling at his hands if she was destined to die anyway. But since she had already gone this far, she did not intend to retreat. She noted that she was not joking and gave her name, Stefania Lana Belest. She also added that she is the crown princess of the Eastern Kingdom. At birth, she did not have blue eyes, which were considered a symbol of belonging to the royal family. She was banished despite the fact that royal blood still flows in her veins. Here in his country, she is not afraid of the laws of the Eastern Kingdom. The Central Lands are a state where foreign laws do not apply. Everyone has the right to protection and support in these lands. Even if her father, the king, found out where she was, he still wouldn't be able to do anything to her. Stefania said that she understood that she could not enjoy his hospitality forever, and therefore wanted to go to another continent. However, now she has neither the money nor the documents to sail there, and so she is asking for asylum for 2 months in order to have time to earn money and leave this country. And it didn't even sound like a lie. But Mr. Chenille himself did not know what to think about what he had heard. He noted that even if she really was a princess, he did not understand why he had to keep her here. That's right. No magician will fulfill requests without some benefit for themselves. She needs to offer something valuable in return. And then perhaps Chenille won't be able to refuse Stephanie. Suddenly, the girl said that she would now explain everything to him. She started talking about the night of the full moon and noted that he hated her. The power of magicians increases depending on the phase of the moon. During the full moon, they reach the peak of their abilities. But only Mr. Chenille, the most powerful magician, cannot bear this day. The full moon takes magicians to a new level, but the master's power gets out of control, causing him hellish pain and suffering. Only Stefania knew about it because she had read the novel. Probably the gentleman is already feeling unwell. After all, the full moon is very close. Stefania said that this medicine would help ease his suffering. He picked up the bottle without even touching it using magic. I took it in my hands and checked the composition using magic. There was no poison in it, but if he doesn't believe her, she can drink the medicine right in front of him. The gentleman didn't answer. He simply knocked over the bottle. The girl remembered the recipe because it was also described in the novel, as well as the step-by-step preparations. Stefania was very hopeful that it would work, and to her surprise, he actually did get better. She was delighted. Thank God the medicine works. Now Chenille was curious how long the effect would last. The girl replied that it would not last long and advised taking it again on the night of the full moon. Then he asked where she learned the recipe for this potion. Stefania said that she was taught by someone who is not a wizard, so anything is possible. But she refused to give her name, which made the gentleman a little angry. She explained that if she gave out the name, the person would simply stop fulfilling her requests. That man was in fact Mr. Chenille himself, like the character in the novel. There was a scene in the book where he was in pain during the full moon. The main character tried to ease his suffering, and Stefania regrets that she has to use knowledge from regional history. But she doesn't think that her actions will have much impact on the course of events. She is destined to die anyway, and Chenille will be happy with Angelique. Then the gentleman noticed that she was quite brave for a simple woman. Stefania didn't understand what was being discussed, and asked again. At that moment, Chenille grabbed her, and she became scared. He pushed Stefania to the floor and swung. Now was the best time to confess everything. She said she didn't understand at all what he meant. Chenille recalled that in the city, she confessed her love to him. But he's not interested in women or relationships, so Stefania thought he wouldn't pay attention to it. However, he remembered her words all this time and admitted that it turned out to be very useful. She found a potion that could cure his ailment and asked to live under the same roof with him. Her intention was not just to help, but to seduce him as many other women had tried to do before her. Stefania was amazed and did not immediately understand what he was talking about. The gentleman calmly explained that he sees through people, and for him there is no secret in their intentions and feelings. She was not interested in his personality or true feelings at all. The main thing for her was to obtain the status of the great magician's woman and enter this circle of influential people. The girl became angry, considering his words unfair, and firmly stated that he was wrong in misjudging her intentions and feelings. He noticed that she stood up from her seat and began to confront him, showing determination and a willingness to defend her opinion. She admitted that she doesn't know what exactly drives other women, and she doesn't intend to speak for everyone, only explaining her own feelings. However, he noticed that he really liked her, and it was felt in her eyes and behavior, despite her words and attempts to hide her emotions. She noted that he had the right not to feel love for her, but he would never allow anyone to dispute the sincerity of his feelings, which meant everything to her. The gentleman was amazed by such frankness, and Stephania herself thought that she had fallen in love with him the very moment she first met him. Her life was filled with trials, disappointments, and bitterness, constant difficulties, from which there was no easy escape. Only Cheniel in this world, full of dangers and loneliness, remained her support and outlet, giving her hope and strength to live on. In the most difficult moments, when she felt difficult and sad, she reread her favorite passages related to Cheniel, and this helped her not to break down. She had no intention of becoming his wife. It was not part of her plans. For her, it was just a situation that she did not want to complicate. Yes, she liked him, but she had to leave the continent in 2 months. She wasn't going to change her plans for someone, even if the feelings were mutual. The gentleman was silent, because he did not expect such directness and determination on her part. He was surprised that she knew so clearly what she wanted and what she did not. Then he suddenly sat down next to her. This caused Stephania a real shock. She could not understand what exactly was happening. She looked at him, and he smiled, as if asking if she really loved him. His gaze was soft, but there was a seriousness in it. The girl replied that it was true, and that she loved him very much, no matter what. This confession came from the heart, and he noticed it. After her words, he smiled and was silent for a moment, then said that, if that was so, then he agreed to fulfill her request, whatever it might be. Stephania was completely shocked by his words. He confirmed that he was serious and that his intentions were real. The girl promised that she would live quietly, as if lower than grass and quieter than water, so as not to disturb him and not create problems. She had given her word that she would not disturb him. And yet she wondered why he had asked her about her feelings, why it was important for him to hear it. Cheniel explained that he simply wanted to confirm one important fact once again. He realized that she was ideal for the role of his bride, and this decision was almost final for him. The girl was shocked and confused. She did not quite understand what he meant by his words. He noticed her confusion and smiling asked if she was listening to him at all and understood what he was saying. The girl agreed, but did not fully understand what exactly the gentleman was talking about. His words seemed unexpected and a little incomprehensible to her. The gentleman, surprised by her answer, said that she was the ideal bride for him. The girl could not understand why he decided so and what it meant. For her, this meant that he wanted to marry her, but she could not explain to herself why he chose her for such a step. In the original story, the gentleman only loved the girl's sister Angelique, and his feelings for her were the only ones she knew. She had absolutely no idea what she had to do with it and why she was being drawn into these conversations, and the gentleman asked her not to take his words the wrong way. He had already started dating different women every month who were interested in his hand, and so he decided that marrying her would be a smart move. Then the girl realized that for him, this was simply a profitable strategic marriage in which love had no meaning. Thanks to his status as a great magician, the Lord gained power over the Central Lands, which made such a marriage even more important for both parties. Cheniel was recognized as the most powerful ruler among all the kingdoms on the continent. His power extended far beyond the Central Lands, causing respect and fear. For many, becoming the wife of Mr. Cheniel meant gaining incredible status and influence, because the heart of such a man opened access to the heights of power and wealth. The girl who won his favor became the wife of the most influential man on the continent, which automatically made her one of the most prominent figures in the entire kingdom. But he began to be suspicious of her, realizing that many women pursue only selfish goals, dreaming of becoming his bride for the sake of fame and wealth. Although the girl herself was not against the fictitious marriage, she knew that she would live with him for only 3 months, and in 2 months, she would be forced to leave the Central Lands forever. She frankly warned him to think carefully about whether such a temporary union suited him, because after 2 months, their paths would diverge without return. She reminded that their marriage would not last long, and this must be taken into account, so as not to have illusions and not to expect anything more from the relationship. And although they won't be able to avoid rumors if they get married quickly, the gentleman made it clear that he doesn't care at all and is prepared to face the consequences. The main thing for him was that she officially became his bride. Then her presence in the Central Lands would not look suspicious to those around her. In addition to himself, Lord Shinul's castle was home to many other mages, each with their own level of power and influence, creating a complex hierarchy. If a norm suddenly appears in this place, it will definitely attract unnecessary attention and raise a lot of questions that are best avoided now. The attention of others could lead to trouble, but by acting as Mr. Chenyel's fiancée, she will be able to avoid the wary glances and suspicions that usually surround her. This status gives her protection and an excuse not to explain herself. Realizing this, she decided to agree, although inside she felt hesitant. Agreeing meant a new page, a new role, and potential challenges to overcome. The gentleman smiled and confirmed the agreement, as if this had removed all doubts and made the situation more real. His confidence was encouraging and inspired hope. But soon, she began to think about how she should now behave so as not to look out of place in her new role and not to harm herself. A plan of action began to emerge in her head. Perhaps she should have acted in a manner befitting her position, carried herself with dignity, and displayed a confidence that could protect her. However, the gentleman said that it was not at all necessary to strictly adhere to certain rules. One could remain oneself, which surprised and calmed her down a little. Despite this, the lady was a little upset and stood up feeling that perhaps she had overdone it with her excitement and worries. At first, she was introduced to a bodyguard, a person to whom she could now turn with any questions, and who would be her protection in her new life. The girl was surprised when the guard suddenly left, leaving her alone without explaining the reason for his sudden departure. At this point, the gentleman said that the one who knocked should come in showing attention to the events outside the door and maintaining an atmosphere of importance. A very handsome young man with unusual violet hair entered the room, which immediately attracted attention and made me interested. She was glad to see the master, although internally, she did not understand who exactly this person was and what role he would play in her life. The girl could not remember this character at all, which created additional tension and mystery around the meeting. The young man noticed her immediately, and his gaze indicated that he too felt something when he met her, as if it was an important moment for both of them. He realized that some half-witted fan had once again gotten to the gentleman, so he treated the situation with a little irony. This was already a habit for him. He asked for a little time to quickly get rid of the obsessive girl and put everything in order, assuring that everything would be fine later. But the gentleman suddenly declared that this girl was his bride, like a cloud hanging over him, and this surprised everyone. After these words, the guy was in complete shock, and the master added that from that day on, the girl's safety was his direct responsibility and part of his salary. The guy was completely shocked. He did not expect such a turn of events and could not come to his senses from the news. He didn't even have time to really realize anything, as the gentleman had already given the command to start work, leaving no room for discussion. The guy tried to get an explanation, wanted to understand the whole situation, but the gentleman had already disappeared, as if he had dissolved into thin air. They didn't explain anything to anyone, they just left. This was typical Chenyel style, which I had to put up with. The guy noted that he himself did not really understand anything, but since the master himself said so, he would carry out this task without questions. The girl introduced herself, gave her full name, and expressed her joy at meeting him, trying to act confidently. The guy introduced himself as Elliot, their master's right hand, the one who is always there and supports in any business. The girl was surprised and did not understand that a character named Elliot could appear in the book. It sounded unusual and strange. The boy thought that perhaps his beauty had truly captivated Milady, and that explained her attention. Stefania was surprised, but he noticed that he could understand her feelings, which is why the master took him into service. He is narcissistic, and that says it all. He claimed that his beauty was so unusual and perfect that he felt embarrassed about it. This self-perception seemed both a gift and a burden. He said that this world was both a gift and a curse, because he was born with perfect features, as if created to be admired, but this made his life difficult. The girl quickly realized that in front of her was an unusual person with an unconventional view of himself and the world. She would have to get used to his oddities, otherwise it would be difficult to communicate. He asked Stefania to listen carefully to his words, as if he wanted to convey something important that could influence her perception of his personality. He admitted that it is not easy to live with such an appearance, because beauty sometimes becomes the cause of loneliness and misunderstanding among others. These revelations of his caused Stefania to have an anxious premonition, and after a couple of hours, his stories were already beginning to irritate her, preventing her from concentrating. The girl felt very tired from the constant conversations. She did not understand how much longer this would last, and how long she would have to endure his obsession. He noticed that no one present was really listening to him, and complained that he was having a hard time because his beauty was attracting too much attention. Stefania decided that the conversation about his appearance had dragged on too long, and said that she thought that was enough talk about it today. It was time to change the subject. She also noted that it was already night outside, and he should consider stopping their conversations and letting her rest. The girl planned to spend the night in this castle, and she really wanted to relax a little and forget about the endless conversations and noise. He apologized for his chatter, admitting that he hadn't even noticed how long the conversation had dragged on, and he sincerely regretted any inconvenience it had caused. He was so carried away by his stories that he completely lost his tongue, but now he saw her off with a good night wish, as if he wanted to show respect and care. The girl was very happy, because now she would have the opportunity to rest a little and take a break after long labors and worries. It became a real respite for her. As they walked down the long corridor, Elliot suddenly slowed down and seemed to stumble, as if something invisible had suddenly appeared under his feet, forcing him to slow down. The lady was surprised by the servant's behavior, because usually he was never late and always remained calm. Now he suddenly became quiet and thoughtful. After some time, they finally approached the chambers, where peace and quiet awaited them, a place where they could rest from all worries and cares. Elliot stated that he considered himself one of the most beautiful people in the world, although this idea seemed arrogant and a little strange to many. However, he immediately asked Stephanie if she knew who Master Chenyl Crowley was, explaining that this gentleman was considered to be a man with an imperfect appearance, and it wasn't his face or his magic, but the fact that he was like a rare rose in the garden that no one dared touch, despite all its beauty and fragility. That was exactly how Elliot perceived the man, and his opinion was as strong and unshakable as if it were the absolute truth. So he asked Stefania to listen carefully to his words, because he really loved beautiful things and understood their value. He could not stand it when someone tried to insult or dishonor the beauty that was sacred to him and a symbol of something very important. At the same time, he believed that the bride's behavior was disgracing the master's image and ruining his impeccable reputation in the eyes of others. After these words, Elliot suddenly began to laugh loudly and hysterically, as if splashing out accumulated emotions and nervousness. He also asked what exactly was the expression on Milady's face that had caused him so many questions and doubts. He knew perfectly well that her status was fake, that she was just playing a role without any real power or influence. At the same time, he could not understand at all why the master needed such a bride, who only spoiled everything with her presence. Then he asked if it was all a lie, and the girl smiled, confirming that yes, that was exactly how it was. Stefania explained that due to the current circumstances, they would have to live here for some time. Apart from their status, there was practically nothing between them. Elliot noted that they were really only connected by status now, but he was sure that it would be their main unifying factor in the future. Stephanie didn't understand what exactly Elliot was talking about, and he explained that the master was a very charming young man who could charm anyone. Elliot added that it is not difficult at all to fall in love with the master, and sooner or later Stefania may want to become his lover, although she herself does not yet know what she feels. The girl was sure that this was impossible, and insisted that she did not need such feelings and relationships with the master at all. Then Elliot approached her and firmly told her that the master would never love Stephanie, and she needed to accept this as a fact. He stressed that it is important to remember this so as not to harbor illusions and not suffer in vain from unjustified hopes. After these words, Elliot took her to the room that was allocated to her for the duration of their stay in the castle. He warned that no one had lived there for a long time, so the room might be a little dusty, but nothing serious. You just need to get used to it. Stefania was shocked by this description because there was a lot of dust there, and it was noticeable right away, not just a little. Elliot explained that this was the reality, and the master asked to find a spare room for her, and this bedroom was the only one available in the castle. The girl calmly said that she understood the situation perfectly well and would not object to the current circumstances, accepting everything as it was. He introduced her to a bodyguard, although he was not obliged to do so, and the girl felt grateful for the care and attention shown. Still, she thought it would be a good idea to do some cleaning here, to at least tidy up the room a little after the long move. Elliot noted that he did not advise her to leave the room without his accompaniment, because without protection, something very unpleasant could happen to her. Frightened, the girl asked what exactly he meant, and why the situation seemed so dangerous to her. He just smiled without explaining the details, wished her good night, and left, leaving her with an uneasy feeling. The girl decided to tidy up the room a little, realizing that compared to living in the mansion with her mother and sister, it was much calmer and more comfortable here. This day seemed endlessly long to her, filled with new impressions and events that never ceased to amaze. Despite her fatigue, she felt joy. She met a guy named Yuchi, who was close to Cheniel. She would never have thought that on the very first day, she would be able to meet Mr. Cheniel himself, which seemed like an almost incredible stroke of luck. She was even more struck by Cheniel's lively smile, which she saw with her own eyes, and this caused her genuine delight. The girl never thought she could be so charming, but at that moment she felt truly special. Apart from Elliot, the day had been a great success. She had met her favorite character, which seemed like a real miracle, especially being alive and well. All the positive events of the day significantly improved her mental and physical condition, filling her with energy and hope. She was sure that her mother must be in complete shock from her sudden departure, because it happened much faster than anyone expected. If Stefania had said goodbye to her mother in person, she would never have let her go, never allowed her to leave or forget about herself. Such a connection was too strong and painful. Now Stefania was increasingly becoming what her mother had spoken of: selfish, self-centered, unconcerned with the feelings of others, as if justifying her actions. 3 days ago, she was doing laundry again, a monotonous and habitual task that allowed her to distract herself at least for a short time from painful thoughts and memories. Suddenly, her mother came up to her, her voice heavy, and said that she wanted to discuss something important with her that could not be delayed or discussed in the future. She reminded me that my birthday was coming soon, an event that promised to change everything and make me look at life from a new perspective. Stefania asked again, because she had completely forgotten about this day, as if it was something distant and insignificant in her current reality. She was about to turn 16 in 2 months, exactly the day before her older sister passed away, leaving behind emptiness and pain. Angelique decided to take revenge on the royal family for the suffering they brought to her sister and mother, deciding to fight them by any means necessary and without compromise. This decision was born on the day her sister left this world forever, at the moment when grief and anger merged into a single goal. 16 years old is the age of majority here, and it's ironic that Stefania won't even live to see that age, won't see what it means to be an adult. The mother said that she believes that Angelica's birthday should be celebrated in a special way this year, emphasizing the importance and specialness of this milestone. After all, only at this moment will she become a true adult, ready for new steps and responsibilities that await her ahead. She explained that she needed Stefania's help because she wanted to buy a dress that Angelica had dreamed of for a long time, and that meant a lot to her. But Stefania politely refused, explaining that she would not be able to help despite requests because the situation was complicated and required independence. She reminded that her mother always took more care of Angelica, especially in terms of gifts, so it was her mother's job to buy such a gift herself. It seemed pointless to Stefani to help, because on her younger sister's birthday, she herself would not be at home, and helping would be just a formality. The mother insisted that this day was especially important for Angelica, and the older sister should please her show care and attention. But Stefania replied that this day is special, not only for Angelica, but also for herself, because it is their common holiday. She noted that Angelica is already spoiled too much. Sometimes it goes beyond all reasonable limits, and supporting such an approach does not seem fair. The mother raised her voice, reminding Stephanie that she was the older sister and should take care of the younger one, support her, and praise her constantly. They explained to her that the older one is obliged to protect the younger one to be her support, and to treat her kindly no matter what the circumstances. At the same time, the mother reminded that Angelica was born sick and helpless, and therefore needs special attention and care from her family. Unlike her sister, Stefania is healthy and free. She can do whatever she wants, and therefore she must understand her privilege and responsibility. According to the mother, it is not difficult to make Angelica happy on her birthday, and you can't think only about yourself. You need to be kinder and more attentive. The mother was never on Stefania's side, so she simply left the house silently to avoid further arguments and pressure. Before leaving, Stefania thought and asked herself whether her mother would have taken as much care of her if she had been the youngest daughter as she did now for Angelica. The mother did not understand why such questions were asked. It seemed completely unnecessary to her. Stefania explained that she just decided to find out without any particular reason. Then the mother called it all nonsense and admitted that she was tired of arguing because conversations lead nowhere. She started to leave, and Stefania calmly said goodbye without trying to stop her or object. The girl suddenly opened her eyes and realized that it was all just a dream, strange and disturbing. Now she was thirsty, so she got up to walk to the kitchen and get some water. But approaching the window, Stefania was in shock. There in the darkness glowed red eyes looking straight at her. Frightened, she could not understand what the hell this was, and why someone was watching her with such a creepy look. Elliot's warning to not leave the room without his company came to mind, or else trouble might happen. Perhaps these strange eyes were what the servant had warned her about, and that she was indeed in danger. In the morning, Elliot came to see her, and she immediately told him about the red eyes by the window, trying to find an explanation. The guy just smiled, admitted that he himself didn't know what it could have been, and couldn't answer her fears. The girl was left perplexed, and Elliot advised her to think for herself, because here you can find a lot that goes beyond the ordinary. In the castle, you can indeed encounter spirits, demons and fairies, and perhaps some young magician summoned a familiar, but was unable to control it. The full moon was approaching, and with each passing day, the magical power of all the wizards in the tower grew stronger, as if energy filled every corner of the castle. This worried everyone who lived here. The girl noticed that he had warned her that if she left the room without his permission, it could be dangerous. She became curious as to how he knew that she would be safe in the room. Elliot explained that there was almost no place in the Heartlands where she could feel truly safe. Hostility surrounded her everywhere, and it was hard to accept. He also added that if she had no more questions, he had brought her breakfast. Modest but necessary for strength and endurance in these conditions. The girl admitted that she understood that her appearance in the castle was unexpected, and they did not expect anything special for her here, which added to the feeling of loneliness and uncertainty. But deep down, she couldn't believe that this was all that was prepared for her, too modest to be real care or respect. Elliot smiled and asked if there was anything she really didn't like, as if trying to figure out what exactly she was hoping for or expecting from this place. The girl shook her head, assuring that everything was fine, and took bread and water to at least slightly calm her hunger and anxiety, squeezing the simple food in her hands. Elliot smiled back, encouraging her humility and trying to create some warmth in their difficult situation to keep her spirits up. He noted that if she wanted to wash her clothes, the bathroom was on the right side, showing her that at least the small amenities in the castle were available, albeit with limitations. He was already heading away, but the girl asked him to stop so she could talk. She wanted him not to leave because she needed to discuss an important matter. The girl explained that she wanted to meet Mr. Chiniel in person to discuss some issues that could not be postponed. Elliot reported that Master Chiniel had left the castle because he had received an urgent assignment that prevented him from meeting now. He will return only in 6 days, and these days coincide with the full moon, which gives the situation special significance and tension. The master will need a new supply of medicine, and everyone must prepare everything necessary for his return to maintain his health. The girl admitted that she understood the situation and was grateful to Elliot for warning her in advance about the delay. Elliot replied that no thanks were needed, smiled and calmly turned away, as if everything was a normal matter, without any special consequences. At that moment, she still had no idea what kind of trials and torments Elliot had prepared for her, later hiding his true intentions. 5 days later, The girl found herself bedridden. Her condition worsened, and she felt very weak and tired. She was tormented by a sharp pain of hunger. The desire to eat was so strong that it became almost unbearable to endure. For 5 days, Elliot tried to make her want to escape the castle herself. He visited her only once a day, bringing her breakfast, water and bread, almost nothing else. Much to Elliot's and her own regret, she had no place to return to. It was hard to be here, not only physically, but also mentally submitting to hopelessness. Eating only once a day, her strength was almost completely exhausted. Even just moving around the small room was very difficult for her. Her body refused to obey and succumbed to weakness. She couldn't sleep normally at night. The constant fear that those terrible red eyes would appear behind the door again haunted her and didn't allow her to relax and get enough sleep. She was shivering so much that if she did not begin to eat better, she would die of hunger rather than of illness. Her body was wasting away, and this condition became life-threatening. At one point, Stefania stood up and realized that things couldn't go on like this any longer. She realized that something had to change, otherwise the consequences would be irreversible. She realized that if she remained in this confinement for even one more day, she might not wake up in the morning. This realization became the final push for decisive action. Then she made the decision to open the door and leave the room despite the fear and danger for the chance of salvation and freedom. She walked slowly down the long corridor, feeling that it was important to find Yuchi, who was Xinye's right hand and could help her with her affairs. The corridor seemed empty, but she felt the tension in the air. Walking further, she stopped at the window and looked out, noticing a familiar face that caught her attention. This face was not an ordinary one. She recognized someone important from the circle of magicians. In front of her stood Magdalena Lively, a girl with a serious expression on her face and unshakable confidence in her eyes. She was known to many and played a big role in Xinye's life. Magdalena was the main enemy of the main character, deeply in love with Xinye, and was not going to give in a single step, which made her a dangerous figure in their story. It was Magdalena who constantly prevented Angelique Stephanie's sister from getting closer to Xinye, stood in the way of their relationship with all her might and wove intrigues. For many readers, Magdalena seemed too stubborn and obstinate, which caused irritation and dislike for her character, although she played an important role in the plot. The fan community has repeatedly left angry and critical comments about Magdalena, accusing her of being too intrusive and ruining the main relationship. In the original story, Xinye tried his best to avoid Magdalena, and it is rumored that this is why he may have chosen Stefania as his wife, to get rid of her persistent attempts to get closer. Most likely, this is exactly how it happened, but if Stefania becomes Xinye's bride, it could turn into a great danger because Magdalena has her own dark and crazy plans. If she saw her now, it could be a fatal blow to her. Her condition was so fragile that even one meeting could lead to death. Stefania decided that she needed to leave quickly and hide in her room to avoid facing her face-to-face and avoid danger to her life. Soon after, the girl began coughing up blood again. Her weakness became more and more noticeable, and her health worsened with each passing minute. The cough intensified, and at one point, she lost consciousness, falling down without strength, which caused alarm among those around her. Elliot, who was looking after her, was very irritated by her constant health problems. He already thought that she would die on the first night after her arrival. From the moment she was brought to the castle, Elliot had been watching the girl closely, trying to understand what kind of threat she could pose. But because of the magical barrier the master had placed on his office, he could not eavesdrop on their conversations. Only later, after hearing the master's wishes, did he understand that he wanted to get rid of Stefania. In fact, he was just a little short of being a serious danger to his master, and that calmed him down a little. The master's right hand, a young and still insignificant magician, seemed weak and harmless in the eyes of those around him. However, Elliot believed that this would not last long, because as soon as he forced Stefania to leave the castle, the master would immediately notice the potential of this hand. Elliot learned that Stefania was the crown princess of the Eastern Kingdom, and perhaps that was why the master did not resort to harsh methods to exile her. He wished that the girl would leave of her own free will, that no one would force her. It was important to maintain the appearance of her freedom of choice in this situation. After some time, Elliot reported to the master that the right person had arrived as planned. The message was short but significant for further actions. The master opened the door and let the guest in. He took a chair standing in the moonlight, which gave the room a special mysterious atmosphere, as if everything that was happening was part of a big plan. Elliot explained that everything went exactly as he wanted, and that the girl did not get into the castle. He emphasized that he personally took on this mission to show his responsibilities. He was confident that he had fully understood the master's wishes and had completed the task flawlessly, expecting praise, and perhaps a promotion or reward for his diligence and dedication. However, to his surprise, the gentleman grabbed him by the neck, which was completely different from what he expected. Such a sudden action made Elliot think that something had gone wrong. At this point, it became clear that the master was trying to kill Elliot right now. The situation became tense and critical. Elliot, sensing danger, begged the master to spare his life, realizing that his chances of survival had been sharply reduced. The gentleman suddenly let go of Elliot, and he fell to the floor, coughing, feeling weak, and trying to pull himself together after a sudden attack of suffocation. Cheniel coldly asked where the girl was, now showing that her current location and future fate were important to him. Or to put it another way, he admitted that he did not understand the meaning of their actions and why this whole game with her presence or absence was needed at all. It was the master who instructed Elliot to get rid of her, and he himself was going to personally deal with the situation, but he entrusted this part of the task to the servant, counting on his loyalty and efficiency. Cheniel didn't take it for long, and suddenly hit Elliot hard in the stomach, throwing him back to show his displeasure and strength, leaving no doubt about the seriousness of the situation. Elliot quickly rose to his feet and tried to explain, claiming that he did not understand at all why the master was so angry with him, because he was only following his orders and did not want to cause problems. He sincerely could not understand the reason for the master's anger, believing that all his actions were an exact reflection of the master's will, because he did exactly what he was told, without the slightest deviation. Cheniel coldly and sternly reminded him that he had asked Elliot to take good care of her, implying a more subtle and careful approach to solving the problem rather than a crude execution. This statement further angered Elliot, who stated that he was aware of her status as the princess of the Eastern Kingdom, and therefore could not simply throw her out the door, so he asked the master to deal with her personally. Elliot was sure he was right, believing that the master wanted to get rid of her, as he did with other women. And he believed that he did everything correctly, acting according to unwritten rules and orders. Therefore, he did not understand why he now found himself the object of the master's wrath, since in his own opinion, he had not made any mistakes and did not deserve such treatment. After these words, Elliot suddenly began to cough up blood, which was clearly a consequence of the master's intervention, and his condition worsened sharply, causing alarm among those around him. The master, not paying attention to the servant's weakness, ordered him to immediately answer his questions and carry out his instructions, demonstrating complete control over the situation and demanding the utmost discipline. Elliot, with difficulty controlling his breathing, announced that she was in a room located at the end of the eastern corridor, clearly marking her location and emphasizing the importance of further action. In a fit of rage and impatience, the gentleman tore Elliot's hand away, showing that he would not tolerate any delays, and demonstrating his ruthlessness and determination in completing the tasks at hand. Elliot couldn't believe that he had actually been wrong in his guesses. It turned out that this girl had much more importance for the master than he had assumed. He could not realize that she had been so dear to the master from the very beginning, and that behind her outward simplicity, there was hidden an important role that he did not even suspect. At this time, the gentleman had already teleported to Stefania, trying to be next to her as quickly as possible and help in the situation she found herself in. He carefully took her in his arms, and again instantly disappeared from the place, carrying the girl to another place where she should be safer. Stefania woke up on a different bed in an unfamiliar room, not understanding where she had been moved and why she was there. She was completely disoriented and couldn't understand where she was, because she had never been in such a place before. It seemed alien to her. She knew for sure that she had fallen asleep in her room, but now there was a completely different environment in front of her, as if she had entered another world. When Stefania left the room, she felt very hungry and fainted, losing consciousness from weakness, and woke up a few hours later right on the floor. After that, she was able to wash the blood off her hands, and then feeling her strength leaving her, she fell onto the bed and fell asleep, as if everything around her had ceased to matter. She never woke up again, immersed in the depths of sleep, which seemed to protect her from reality, hiding the truth from her consciousness. But she could not understand at all how and why she ended up here, without any explanations or answers, as if she had been thrown into an alien world. Suddenly, Yuchi burst into her room, and his joy was so sincere that she felt at least a drop of hope, which warmed her heart a little. He rushed towards her and hugged her immediately, asking for forgiveness. His voice was shaking, and his words sounded like he was truly sorry for what had happened. The girl was confused and could not understand why he was apologizing, because she herself did not understand what exactly caused such a reaction. The guy explained that he felt guilty because he couldn't keep an eye on her and prevent her from meeting that damn narcissist. Stefania wondered what exactly he was talking about and who this mysterious damned narcissist was that had caused them so much anxiety. Yuchi apologized again, admitting that he thought she must be very tired, because he saw how weakly she held on and leaned on her with his whole body. He began to ask how she felt now and how much time she was able to sleep after this whole story. The girl smiled back and explained that she felt fine, just more tired than usual. Nothing terrible had happened. But Yuchi didn't agree with her. He knew that she had been forced to live in a dirty, cramped closet for a whole week, and it couldn't go without a trace. She received almost no food and did not leave the room, and all this did not seem to him empty words or an exaggeration. The girl asked in surprise how he knew about this, and Yuchi replied that the master himself, who was closely monitoring the situation, told him everything. Yuchi began by saying that she was now his fiancée, and it was after this that Stefania told him about all the events that had happened to her. Yuchi explained that he was supposed to be the one looking after her, but he was suddenly called to the city on an urgent matter. As a result, Master Chinyel assigned Elliot to guard her so that she would be safe. Despite what happened, the master severely punished Yuchi for not fulfilling the order. The girl, however, is glad that now it is Yuchi who is watching her. She feels calmer with him around. She asked if Yuchi had really carried her to that bedroom, but he assured her that he had not done so and had no involvement in her placement in the room. At that moment, the master suddenly teleported into the room, saying that the lady had woken up and everything was fine, which calmed her down a little. Yuchi said that he would now go get breakfast, to bring food, leaving the girl and the master alone. In the meantime, they will be able to talk a little, alone, discuss important things, because now no one will interfere with their conversation. The girl tried to stop Yuchi because she didn't want to be alone with the master, who suddenly appeared in her room. She noticed that Yuchi had told her everything. Apparently, he had personally ordered and brought her to this room to ensure her safety. She asked to believe that the room that Elliot had provided her with was quite sufficient and comfortable, so there was no need to scold her for it, apologizing for unnecessary worries. In addition, the girl prepared medicine for Yuchi and now intends to return to the room to immediately give it to him, caring for his health. As he approached, she became frightened and recoiled, as if she had not expected his presence so close. Her heart began to beat faster from the unexpected feeling of anxiety caused by the sudden collision. An unusual pleasant aroma filled the air, a mixture of expensive perfume and the delicate scent of freshly washed linen, which she had never smelled before. This smell seemed magical and attractive to her. She could not find any analogues for this smell in her experience. It was completely unique and unforgettable, as if nature itself had given it a special aura that distinguished it from everything else. Frightened, she quickly stepped back and apologized, explaining that she had not meant to touch him intentionally, and that such a thing would never happen again, trying to smooth over the awkward misunderstanding that had arisen. She vowed to behave decently and with restraint in the future, but he, as if not listening to her words, gently but confidently laid her on the bed, taking control of the situation. She asked him why he did this, because her job was just to bring medicine, and she did not expect such treatment, trying to understand the motives of his actions. He put his hand over her mouth, silencing her, demanding that she shut up and stop asking questions for at least a moment, as if he thought that there was no point in talking now, and it would be better to remain silent. Then Chinil, looking at her, asked who she really considered herself to be, questioning her sense of self and place in this world, as if testing her inner strength. The girl did not quite understand the meaning of this question and was confused, trying to grasp what exactly he wanted to hear and what such a strange and abrupt question was leading to. He removed his hand from her lips and became indignant, saying that he did not understand how she allowed the servant to treat her so rudely and unceremoniously, as if he wanted to protect her honor and dignity. In response, she said that Elliot brought her food every day, and that was the only sign of his concern, although sometimes with a lack of tact in trying to explain the situation. Her poor health has nothing to do with his actions. She just has weak health, and her body can't handle it, which affects her condition. This is an objective reason, not someone's fault. For the first time in a long time, the gentleman addressed her by name, which was a surprising event, because before he always did without it and did not show any attention to names. In the original story, Chenyel never called people by name for him. It was unnecessary and unimportant. He saw no point in remembering the names of those around him. His attitude towards people was detached, so he simply did not remember names, considering it a waste of time and unnecessary for communication. The only time he remembered someone's name was when he first met Angelica, when her beauty truly struck him and made him pay attention. Then he called her politeness and excessive self-abasement disgusting, said that such behavior greatly irritated him and interfered with normal perception. After that, he asked her what she wanted to achieve, continuing to behave as if he considered himself inferior to others and showed no dignity. The girl explained that she simply wanted to apologize and did not intend to behave in such a way. Her actions were caused by the desire to avoid conflict. The master then told her that he was her fiancé, and in the relationship between them, she had to be equal, speak directly and confidently. Otherwise, he would not be able to understand her true feelings. She was used to always putting herself below others for her own safety, but now she realized that she didn't have to continue to behave like that, and that she could behave differently. The girl remembered that she fell in love with him, primarily because of his kindness and sincerity, which he always showed to her, without any conditions or hidden motives. He once told her to always remember that no matter what, she could always trust him and speak openly, no matter what was going on in their lives. She had to share her feelings with him. When she felt bad, sad, happy, when she liked or disliked something, so that he would always understand her mood. After all, now she was not just a close person, but his fiancé, and this imposed new obligations and trust in each other on them. At that moment, Yuchi quietly entered the room and announced that he had brought breakfast, trying not to disturb the peace or distract them from their conversation. Seeing that the girl was not reacting, he quietly added that he would come a little later so as not to disturb her, and left, leaving the door ajar. However, the girl called him back, and after a few minutes, Yuchi reappeared to feed her, not wanting to leave her hungry. She told Yuchi that she couldn't eat that much food because she had little appetite, and thanked him for his concern. Yuchi replied that he had tried very hard and carefully prepared breakfast so that she would like it and feel his attention. He added that perhaps she did not like breakfast, but his efforts came from a desire to please her, since his charm was not always noticeable at first glance. Meanwhile, she did not understand how she could calmly go about her business when the master was constantly burning her with his gaze, as if he could see right through her. Yuchi turned to the master and said that his intense gaze was embarrassing even to the bear himself, hinting at how conspicuous and inconvenient he was. The girl was very scared after the guy's words, which sounded unexpected, and alerted her. At that moment, Yuchi calmly told her to continue eating, ignoring her fear. Yuchi asked if the lady knew why magic couldn't help cure fatigue, even though it seemed like it could solve any problem that way. The girl showed curiosity and asked why this was happening. The guy in turn was surprised that she still did not know this, because this is a rather important fact. Stefania tried to remember that somewhere in the novels the reason was described, but unfortunately she remembered almost none of it, and asked to give her time to think. Then, Yuchi decided that if she really didn't know, then he would now explain everything in detail in order to close this gap in her knowledge and clarify the situation. He started from the very basics, explaining that in every human body, there is a magical power that is inherent in nature and forms the basis of all magic. In their world, people whose magic output exceeds acceptable limits, are called wizards, a special category that differs from ordinary people. Yuchi explained that the amount of magic each person has is an innate quality, like the eye color of a newborn child that they are born with. Therefore, from early childhood, it is possible to determine whether a child will be a wizard, and this trait plays an important role in his future and development. Now it was time for unexpected questions. If a person is born with a magical norm, what is the probability that when he grows up, he will become a real magician? This question worried everyone around. The lady thought about the answer and said that the chances were about 30%. But the guy objected that this was wrong, and that such a probability was too high for a normal person. He claimed that a normal person has no chance at all to become a wizard, because the magical norm cannot develop into real power and will never reach the level of a magician. The girl listened attentively, and the guy continued saying that a norm would never become a wizard, even if a full moon came or other mystical circumstances did not help change this fact. He added that if such people try to artificially enhance their magical powers, it will be extremely dangerous and almost always leads to tragedy because the body is not ready for such stress. When using healing magic, the magician directs his power into another person, and if the magical energy of a normal person is less than that of the magician, this can lead to serious consequences. If the patient's magical energy reserves are too low, then attempting to accept someone else's power can lead to death because the body simply cannot withstand such a load. Therefore, it is forbidden to use any kind of magic on people with a magical norm, since it is too big a risk and can cost them their lives at any moment. He noticed that the lady was indeed very smart, and explained this by the fact that Yuchi was an excellent teacher who knew how to convey knowledge and support in difficult moments. Even before arriving in the Central Lands, she already knew for sure. No strength and no leg could heal her from the illness that was gradually taking over her body. The hope of a full recovery had disappeared, and now all she really wanted was to meet Mr. Chenial despite all the difficulties and fears. At that moment, Stefania Zoe became curious, wondering why the guy had even started this conversation, what he was trying to find out, and why it was important. He explained that when he was in her room, he noticed something unusual that immediately caught his attention and made him wonder about her condition. There was a bucket of water in the corner of the room, but this water was not ordinary at all. It was bright red, as if it had been mixed with blood. Using magical analysis, he was able to determine that the blood belonged to her, which indicated that she was hiding serious problems. The guy assumed that the girl was trying to hide something, because the blood couldn't just appear out of nowhere, and this indicated a big secret. He stood up because she didn't seem to be hurt, which meant he had to figure out where the blood was coming from and why it was appearing in the bucket. The girl could not admit the truth about her illness because she knew it would lead to undesirable consequences, so she was forced to lie. She explained that she didn't want to tell anyone, but she was very dizzy from hunger and fell slightly damaging the back of her head. That's why there was blood. The girl started bleeding, but she quickly cleaned it up and washed her hair thoroughly so as not to leave any traces of damage. Outwardly, everything looked neat and without signs of injury. The boy was shocked and alarmed to hear that she had fallen and hurt her head. He insisted on looking at the wound because he could not take the news calmly. She assured her that the bleeding had stopped long ago, and the wound had managed to heal, so there was no need to worry. Everything had passed and was not causing her pain. However, the guy was not at all ready to calm down. He found it difficult to come to terms with the idea that she might have a head injury, and he continued to show concern. The girl, seeing his anxiety, only made the situation worse, trying to explain that in fact, she was fine, and her head didn't hurt at all, so there was no reason to worry. The guy asked again if everything was really okay, as he was very worried and could not believe her words without confirmation. She insisted that she was indeed fine, and reminded him that he shouldn't worry too much, because it was just a small scratch. Yuchi noted that he had already said that normal magic could not heal this kind of injury, so his concern was quite justified, and he kept a close eye on her condition. He very persistently asked her not to remain silent if something suddenly happened, or if trouble arose. It was important to report it immediately so as not to miss anything and to help quickly. Yuchi then promised to personally ensure that she would see a doctor as soon as possible and receive the necessary help without delay. Stefania nodded and said that she understood the seriousness of the situation and appreciated his concern because such attention was very unusual for her. She even admitted that she wanted to ask why he was so kind and attentive already at their first meeting. It seemed strange to her. Yuchi explained that it was because Stefania was a kind of inspiration for him, something that gave him strength and hope. The girl did not immediately understand what exactly he meant, because she herself did not feel that she was doing anything special or worthy of praise. He just looked at her quietly, with the kindest, most sincere smile she had ever seen. Wordless, but meaning so much. Stefania was never able to fully understand his thought, but that smile remained in her memory, warming and calming her heart. From this smile, it suddenly became light and calm inside her, as if all the worries and fears around her disappeared. Yuchi also brought new clothes for her, clean and neat, as if specially prepared for her with care and attention to detail. He explained that the dress was magical, with a charm placed on it that allowed it to automatically adjust to the size of the person wearing it, fitting perfectly. Yuchi invited her to try on the dress, emphasizing that it was very beautiful and could help her feel more confident and better in this new world. And Stefania asked if she could really take this dress. The guy answered that, of course, because it was created especially for her, taking into account all her wishes and sizes. The girl thought that the dress was sewn by Yuchi personally for her, but the guy explained that a sorceress lives in the castle, who makes outfits for all the inhabitants. The sorceress who sewed clothes seemed familiar to her, as if she had already heard of such magic or encountered something similar before. Stefania had no idea that there was magic that could create or change clothes so easily, and quickly it seemed amazing and unusual to her. She asked the guy to convey her gratitude to the sorceress for the dress, which turned out to be special and very important for her at that moment. The guy didn't smile, but noted that it was Master Cheniel who had gotten the sorceress to sew this shirt for Stephanie, emphasizing the importance of this event. Stefania was shocked by this news, and the guy added that the master himself brought her here to the castle to protect and support her. The girl was shocked and did not believe it right away, because she thought that it was Yuchi who found her in that room and helped her get out. But it turned out that everything was different. The guy said that the master personally interrogated Elliot's servant, found out her exact location, and immediately went to her room, not allowing his beloved bride to be exposed to danger. Stefania noticed that she was not loved at all, and the relationship between her and the gentleman was completely different. But for some reason, the boy thought that there was true love between them. The girl was surprised. She did not understand at all what exactly the young man was talking about, and why he was so confident in his conclusions, because from her side, everything looked different. She explained that before drawing any conclusions, he should tell how exactly Mr. Cheniel introduced her and what was said at that moment. The guy admitted that he didn't explain much. He simply said that from that day on, she officially became Mr. Cheniel's fiancée. He also noted that now the gentleman will be obliged to take care of her, make decisions, and protect her as befits a future husband. Stefania was shocked, because the gentleman again did not give any explanations to his subordinates. And this is important. Everyone misunderstands their relationship, and she does not know how to leave in 2 months. She decided that she would definitely talk to Yuchi about this, because he was the master's right hand, and could clarify a lot in this confusing situation. Therefore, the girl tried to explain to the young man that the situation was not at all what he thought, and everything was much more complicated than it seemed at first glance. But the guy just used magic to put a dress on. The girl added that it was very interesting, but it was time for him to leave and end the conversation. They agreed to discuss everything in more detail when the girl had finally recovered and was feeling much better. Right now, however, talking was premature and could only worry her. The girl tried to stop the guy, but he insisted that it was time for him to go and explained that he could not stay any longer. His farewell seemed hasty and a little tense. The guy noticed that the girl grabbed him unexpectedly tightly and felt that something was wrong. But she quickly assured him that everything was fine, and he decided not to ask unnecessary questions. She was moved to a more comfortable room, but despite the improvements, she was still afraid to be alone, especially at night when her fears became stronger. She admitted that she actually once saw strange red eyes that made her really scared and haunted her. The guy was surprised by such a confession, And the girl added that although these eyes were seen only once, the image still does not leave her head and haunts her thoughts. These night visions made it difficult for her to sleep peacefully, and even daylight could not dispel the anxiety that had settled in her soul. The guy said he understood her fears and worries, and she, feeling supported, asked if he knew what could be the cause of such visions. He thought for a moment, trying to find the right words, and finally admitted that he knew who could be behind those red eyes, but it required a special time to meet. To meet this creature, you need to wait until nightfall, because only then is safe communication and finding out the truth possible. For now, he advised her to rest a little and gain strength, because the night was still far away, and now sleep and peace were what were important. Using magic, he created a soft blanket around her and laid the girl down so that she could relax and fall asleep without fear. He covered her with a warm blanket and calmly told her not to be afraid, but to sleep peacefully while he was nearby, guarding her peace. He wished that she would have only the warmest and most peaceful dreams with me, that the night would be filled with light and comfort, despite all the hardships of the day. Stefania woke up and immediately felt that someone was nearby, although at first she could not understand who exactly it was. The feeling was very strong and unusual. She rose from her bed and was surprised to see Monsieur Cheniel sitting quietly next to her, watching her attentively as if guarding and protecting her that night. She was in complete shock when he told her it was time for her to get up, and without giving her time to doubt, he carefully picked her up in his arms, as if afraid that she would fall or get scared. The girl was so shocked by this unexpected act that she could not understand either the reason or the meaning of what was happening. Her mind was confused with guesses and emotions. He quickly walked to the window and, without wasting any time, ran outside with her, as if carrying her away on some important and urgent journey through the air. Stefania was shocked when she realized they were flying, and the master told her to look down to see what was happening on the ground at that very moment. Looking down, she saw a whole group of mages gathered below. Their figures seemed small, but their presence was palpable and menacing, as if something big was approaching. At the same time, she noticed a huge white wolf with bright red eyes, standing among the magicians, creating a sense of power and mystical protection at the same time. Cheniel noted that Yuchi had told him that she had already met this wolf in the castle, and now everything had become much clearer, because this was not just a beast, but a familiar. It became clear that the white wolf was a familiar, a special magical companion, connected to her and to magic, which gave the whole situation additional mystical meaning and importance. Some wizards summon special servants, familiars who help them not only in battles, but also in everyday affairs, making life easier and increasing their efficiency in combat and everyday tasks. Now she realized that the very same boar she had seen that night was much more frightening and dangerous than it had seemed at first. This image would forever remain in her memory as a symbol of her fear. The moment she came face to face with her fear, it immediately disappeared, as if it had dissolved into thin air, giving way to calm and confidence, which gradually began to come into her soul. It was probably Yuchi who approached Mr. Cheniel with a request to help her overcome this inner fear and gain the strength needed to overcome the obstacles that were preventing her from moving forward. Stefania couldn't hide her smile and expressed her deep gratitude to Mr. Cheniel for opening her up to this new way of looking at herself and showing her how to overcome her own fears. At that moment, while she was saying words of gratitude, they unexpectedly met face to face, and this chance encounter became special and was remembered by both for a long time. A fright seized Stephanie because she realized that she had just involuntarily touched Monsieur Cheniel with her lips, and this unexpected contact caused in her a storm of feelings and emotions that she did not expect. She touched his lips and immediately felt how she began to ask for forgiveness. Although she did not want to at all, this moment made her confused and worried about what happened. Only now did it dawn on her how close they were to each other, as if the invisible line between them had disappeared, and the feeling seemed both frightening and alluring at the same time. She warned them that they should go downstairs so as not to attract unnecessary attention, because there were too many people around them who might start looking in their direction. However, she noticed a strange tone on his face and thought that perhaps he was in pain, although she did not understand whether this pain was related to her actions or not. Her thoughts revolved around the hope that the reason for his condition was not related to her, that everything that was happening was caused by something other than her touch. He remained silent, and she completely forgot about everything she was going to say or do, completely immersed in worrying about him. It was all because of today, the full moon, which caused Mr. Chignell a particular dislike and made his condition especially unstable. She didn't immediately understand what was happening when he suddenly teleported with her to his room, as if time and space had changed around them. When she entered, she saw him fall to the floor, and at that moment, fear overcame her, because he looked extremely bad and helpless. Without thinking, she rushed to his aid, seeing that his condition was catastrophic, and every moment without attention could be dangerous. His magical energy burst forth with a force that was difficult to contain, as if there was an unbridled storm raging within him, threatening to break out. The moonlight suddenly touched the master, and it caused a violent release of mana in his body, which he could no longer control. It was all her fault, this strange and unpredictable moment. Stefania thought that all this chaos happened because of her fear, which had completely taken over her. In order to dispel this fear, Yuchi asked the master to do this for her, hoping to restore peace. Stefania's fear was so strong that she immediately understood that the medicine had to be urgently obtained and brought to the master in order to stop the growing crisis and restore his control over himself. Suddenly, she noticed that the gentleman was not going to let her go. He grabbed the hem of her dress and held her, as if not allowing her to leave, as if something in him resisted her decision. Stefania couldn't understand the reason for this behavior. Why was he stopping her now when help seemed so necessary? It remained a mystery to her. She explained that she only needed a few minutes to bring the medicine and assured him that it would not take long, but the gentleman still remained adamant. She again asked him to let her go, insisting that she wanted to help only for his sake and wanted nothing more than to ease his condition and relieve the tension. Finally, he let her go, and a suitcase appeared next to her, as if specially prepared, so that she could quickly collect the necessary things and not waste time. Stefania understood that today a lot depended on this step, and without further thought, she rushed to the master, deciding to act quickly and decisively for the sake of salvation. Inside the suitcase, she found exactly the medicine she was looking for. It was ready to help, and now all that was left was to deliver it to the master in time. She immediately hurried to the gentleman, and without losing a second, applied the medicine to his lips, trying to help him take it as quickly as possible. There was concern and determination in her eyes, but she could not understand at all why the gentleman did not drink the medicine, although it was so necessary. Her thoughts were confused. She looked for the reason for his refusal, but did not find the answer. She had prepared the medicine in advance for only 2 months, expecting that this time would be enough for his recovery. But now she realized that everything might not go as planned. If the gentleman did not take the medicine now, it would remain aside, and he would suffer all night, experiencing pain and suffering that she could not allow under any circumstances. She couldn't afford to leave him like this, so if he couldn't take the medicine himself, she had to find a way to help no matter what. She carefully approached him closer, but deep down she knew that her idea could be wrong and lead to undesirable consequences. The girl thought that she could try to pour the medicine from his mouth to his mouth, hoping that this would somehow help to unclench his clenched jaw so that the medicine would finally get inside. But she couldn't figure out what exactly she should do next. She was faced with a task that seemed too complicated and hopeless. At that moment, Yuchi appeared outside the door and said that he had seen everything, as if wanting to help or understand what was going on. But his words only added more tension to the room. The girl did not understand what exactly he was talking about, and due to embarrassment, she could not immediately answer, feeling awkward and confused in this difficult situation. She claimed that today was an ordinary day for her, and she did practically nothing. There were no worries or special events. Everything went quietly and calmly. The young man smiled and thought about romance like lovers, wanting to prolong the night under the light of the full moon. It's so touching and beautiful. However, the girl was sure that this was not the issue at all, that the medicine that was supposed to help the master's daughter and ease her condition at this difficult moment was much more important. Therefore, she asked for help to give the medicine as soon as possible so that it would begin to work and bring relief to the master's daughter without delay or loss of time. It was necessary to urgently prepare the medicine so that the master could take it, because then he would feel much better and his condition would begin to improve. Yuchi noted that it is generally not recommended to use magic on the master during a full moon because it can cause unwanted consequences and worsen the situation. Nevertheless, he understood the seriousness of the matter and decided to first try taking the medicine himself to evaluate its effect and understand what to do next. He wanted to take a very small dose to test how safe it was and how quickly it would start helping without risking his health too much. The girl was puzzled and did not understand what exactly the guy was talking about, but he replied that without his participation and the first try, she would not be able to help the master properly. The girl agreed anyway, because she was not against such an outcome. She understood that it could help and saw no reason to refuse, although she was a little worried. She still couldn't understand how this related to the gentleman. Her thoughts were confused. She tried to understand why exactly this should relate to him and how everything was connected. A few minutes later, the guy said that everything was ready and the medicine had worked. The gentleman really felt better. This was unexpected and pleasant news that gave hope. The girl felt joy because now she could somehow help in a difficult situation. Her heart was filled with relief that her efforts were not in vain and someone received support. However, no one except the gentleman himself was supposed to know about the existence of this medicine. It was a secret that had to be carefully guarded to prevent unnecessary questions. She tried to look calm, hiding her feelings, although inside she was still worried. The guy assured her that there was nothing to be afraid of, and there was no need to worry. He said that he knew she could make the necessary remedy, and it would help against the master's illness. His confidence added to the girl's confidence in her powers and capabilities. The girl was amazed and asked how the guy knew about it. Her surprise was sincere because she had not told anyone about her skills. The boy explained that the master had told him everything because he was his main assistant and confidant. This explained why he knew this secret. At the same time, no one else was supposed to know about the medicine, so they couldn't relax and start spreading information. Everything remained strictly between them. The girl expressed her gratitude to the guy and noted that since he knew about the medicine, it meant that he also knew the truth about her relationship with the gentleman. This was an important thought for her. The guy was surprised to hear about some truth and asked again what exactly she meant, not hiding his curiosity and desire to understand the situation more deeply. He stated that she was the master's fiancée, and therefore he was not supposed to know anything extra about her. For him, this fact was enough not to interfere in her affairs. After that, he asked what exactly he still needed to know if there was anything important that he didn't know yet. She had already had to say that she would be a bride for only 2 months, but he responded to this with unexpected laughter, as if he did not believe her words. He explained that he had been surprised by her persistence this morning, but he realized that the master had simply not revealed the whole truth, and so she had done the best she could. Yuchi smiled, confirming that during these 2 months, the girl would be under the master's protection, and that was it. No compromises. If she suddenly needs any help or support, she should immediately report it without delay or concealment. The girl responded with a smile and expressed sincere gratitude, realizing that the conversation was over and it was time for him to leave. In addition, he added that he would like to show Stefania something important that could change a lot in their future relationship. The girl asked him what exactly he meant, and the guy explained that, to do this, they would have to go up to the roof of the castle. He assured her that what she would see there would definitely please and surprise her. Despite his promises, the girl felt that he had not explained anything properly. Still, she decided not to argue and followed him, trusting his words and curiosity. They sat down on the metal surface with the others and were immediately thrown out of the window as if picked up by an invisible force, carrying them up and out of the castle. On the rooftop itself, a scene awaited them. Elliot was tied up begging for mercy and admitting his wrongdoing, desperately asking not to punish him too harshly. Stefania asked the guy with disbelief if he was really going to show her this, not hiding her surprise and almost shock at what she saw on the roof. Yuchi calmly stated that he had already paid off the one who had offended Stefania, and that the conversation could be considered closed, which left no room for doubt. The girl noted that in her opinion, he had clearly overdone it with the punishment, because the situation seemed to her excessively harsh and disproportionate. But the guy objected that no, the punishment was well deserved, because Elliot decided to go against the master's will, which was unacceptable for him. Moreover, he hurt the master's fiancée, and therefore, in the guy's opinion, Elliot deserves an even more severe punishment than he received now. Elliot himself tried to justify himself, saying that he wanted to do the best thing. He thought that the master was going to get rid of her, as well as the other girls in their circle. He could not even imagine that she was so important to the master, and in fact, his intentions were good, although the consequences turned out to be completely different. But after these words, the guy showed no mercy, and using a special mechanism, dealt Elliot a strong blow, demonstrating that there would be no mercy here. Yuchi looked like he didn't understand anything at all about what had happened. His eyes were completely confused, as if he was trying to grasp the meaning, but everything remained unclear and vague to him. He gave him a chance to fix the situation and apologize to the guests, but he missed the opportunity which was his only hope for salvation. This moment became decisive and irretrievably lost. At that very moment, Yuchi shone like a precious diamond, bright, unyielding, and unwavering, arousing admiration and respect from those around him with his calmness and confidence. Then the girl realized that it was not worth angering him because he was too strong and determined. She also noticed that, although the punishment for this stupid peacock was severe, it was fair and deserved. However, she herself probably wanted to take revenge and feel satisfaction from carrying out her punishment to get rid of her anger and regain control of the situation. That's why he suggested that she press a button to make the glove strike with full force, allowing her to release the tension and feel power over what was happening. Stefania replied that she was in no hurry with this because the guy seemed to her to be overly spoiled, and looking at him now, she even stopped being angry and lost all desire for revenge. The guy asked again if she really thought so, and there was a slight note of alarm in his voice. He was genuinely concerned and wanted to make sure that her mood had changed. He said that he took her words into account, but still Elliot would be here for a few more days, staying close and waiting for his moment until the situation was finally resolved. The cute-looking boy turned out to be much scarier than Mr. Cheniel himself. His look and actions inspired more fear than it seemed at first glance. No one expected this from the seemingly harmless young man. It was time to go back, and the boy wished Elliot good night. He calmly and confidently ended the conversation, leaving no room for doubt or further questions. Everything happened as if it was planned in advance. Then they took off and flew away. The girls hardly felt sorry for him, because he was to blame for his misfortune. It was clear to everyone around him. He had put himself in this situation, and no one wanted to waste energy on regrets. A few minutes later, they returned back inside. Everything looked as if nothing had changed, and time seemed to have stood still. The return was unexpected, but calm, and without unnecessary words. He reminded her that Stefania was about to leave the continent and asked if she wanted to do anything as a farewell. This question caused her a slight surprise, because thoughts of farewell still seemed far away. The girl asked again, in surprise, not believing her ears. Her interest was sincere. She did not expect that someone would offer to arrange a farewell party or fulfill a wish before leaving. The guy noticed that there were only 2 months left before she left, and was surprised that she didn't want anything special. It seemed strange to him, as if she didn't value the time left and didn't want to spend it brightly. In fact, she had already done much with the master, and asking for more seemed rude. She considered that gratitude was enough and did not want to appear ungrateful or capricious in the last period of her life. Yuchi reminded her that he had promised to do his best while he looked after her. He talked about how they could indulge in a little entertainment to make her last days more colorful and memorable. If she wanted to go somewhere fun or experience something unusual, they would have the strength to make her wish come true. That was his determination, to do everything so that she could feel happy despite everything. In 2 months, the day would come when she would have to die. It was a bitter truth she couldn't ignore, but she didn't want to admit it out loud. The date hung over them like an inevitable conclusion, and to be honest, she didn't even think about what else she wanted, except for meeting Mr. Cheniel. Her thoughts were occupied with the main thing, and other desires seemed unimportant and secondary in comparison to this. She thought for a moment, then realized that there was something important to say. It was something she had kept to herself for a long time, and now decided to reveal. She shared that she had one cherished wish for her daughter that she had never told anyone about before. It was very important to her, and she was waiting for the right moment. Cheniel remained confused, not quite understanding what was happening now, and why all this was happening. His thoughts were racing, trying to put the whole picture together. Yuchi explained that in front of them was a cake that they had baked together for 3 hours. It was their little shared secret and gift. He noted that Stefania had made this cake herself, and he had no idea that she had such talent and skill in handling dough and sweets. Yuchi asked Cheniel to try the cake as soon as possible, emphasizing that it was important for everyone, especially for Stefania, who put a piece of her soul into it. Cheniel, using fire magic, brought his hand to the cake, but Yuchi immediately rushed to grab it, asking in surprise why the master wanted to burn the gift and not just eat it. Cheniel was confident in his actions, although it looked like he was going to destroy the cake with fire, which caused confusion among those around him. Cheniel asked Yuchi what he expected from his reaction, and Yuchi replied that they brought the cake for him to taste, not to set it on fire and destroy it. Stefania thought that Cheniel probably wouldn't want to try her food, which made her a little upset because she tried so hard and wanted to please. In her past life, she dreamed of becoming a pastry chef, learning to make different sweets and delighting people with her creations. When she was talking about her wishes, Yuchi told everyone that she wanted to make sweets, and this aroused genuine interest and respect from those present. The guy was surprised by what he heard, because the girl firmly stated that everything was exactly like that. His gaze expressed bewilderment, but there was not a shadow of doubt in her words. However, the ingredient needed for the preparation turned out to be rare and expensive. Getting it in sufficient quantity would be difficult and expensive, so if you can't, it's okay. However, the guy confidently said that there would be no problems with this. He promised to get everything she asked for, despite the difficulties and the cost. The girl was sincerely grateful for such support. Her eyes shone with gratitude, because the help seemed real and sincere, which was very important to her. The boy decided to ask if she had ever made exactly these sweets. Before his interest was sincere, he wanted to understand how familiar the process was to her. Stefania admitted that she had prepared similar desserts, but not as often as she would have liked. She had experience, but it remained rather rare and fragmentary. She noted that she really enjoyed the cooking process. In her past life, the girl had a real sweet tooth, and she especially enjoyed creating various delicacies. She was fascinated by the variety of cakes and pastries that people could create with their own hands. This diversity always inspired and attracted her. For this reason, she even entered college to become a pastry chef. Studying seemed like a dream and an opportunity to realize her creative desires. Unfortunately, fate decreed otherwise. She died without completing her studies. Her dreams remained unfinished, but the memory of them lived in her soul. None of her close ones were fans of solo baking, but everyone supported her passion. In this world, she had people to whom she wanted to give joy with her baking to share something delicious. The boy showed interest and asked if he could try her sweets too. She smiled and said that of course he could try. She would be pleased to treat him. She would really be pleased if the boy tried her baking. But besides him, she also had Mr. Cheniel in her thoughts. She wanted to treat him too to show off her skills. The boy was surprised to hear that she was going to treat the master. It sounded unusual to him, because he did not expect that such a serious person could be interested in simple pastries. The girl blushed slightly and said shyly that it was so. She really wanted to treat Mr. Cheniel. Her words sounded sincere, and there was a slight awkwardness in them. She asked him if he thought it was a bad idea. The boy replied that he said so because he had never seen Mr. Cheniel eat anything sweet, and so he doubted it. The truth is, she knew that Mr. Cheniel ate sweets just as well as she did. Even though the main story didn't mention it, she knew it from other sources. Although there was no hint of it in the official story, she read a funny fact from the author, who talked about it in his notes. This detail added a little liveliness to the image of the master. The author said that their strongest mage has a real sweet tooth. He has mentioned his love for sweets on social media many times, and it has become a secret of sorts among those who watch him. The author directly stated that the girl was absolutely sure of the truth of her words, as if she had no doubt that everything was happening exactly as she said. Yuchi noticed that if the girl prepared the sweets herself, the master simply would not be able to refuse her because she had a special talent for persuasion. She understood that she hoped that his words were correct, although now the gentleman did not want to eat her treat at all, and was indifferent to it. However, when she was offered the sweet, the gentleman did not even want to try it, and there was some strange detachment in his gaze. The girl was a little upset. Perhaps this detail was simply written in the novel by the author, and in fact had no significance. In the end, it was just a simple fact that the author added after the publication of the novel, because even the main character did not know about the gentleman's weakness for sweets, and he himself was unlikely to reveal this addiction. Besides, he usually didn't eat sweets with strangers, but Yuchi tried to convince the master to try the cake he had prepared. In response, the master briefly said that, if he wanted, he could try the cake himself, ignoring the persuasion. Perhaps the girl wanted too much, trying to force him to eat, although there was no particular point in it. Sometimes it is better to back off, and not insist so as not to cause irritation. It was better to leave before he started getting angry and showing displeasure. Sometimes stopping in time is the best way out of an awkward situation. But Yuchi continued to speak, without stopping asking if Leon was sure of his words. He reminded her that Stefania had tried so hard to make the cake to please the master. Stefania was frightened and confused, not understanding why Yuchi even brought up the subject and what he meant. This made her feel awkward. Yuchi turned to Stefania and remarked that if the master did not want to eat, he would like to kiss this cake instead. His words sounded unexpected and somewhat strange. This was understandable, and Stefania replied that he could of course do it if he wanted. She tried not to show embarrassment and to give him freedom of choice. After that, Yuchi took her hand and said that they would not go to the kitchen because he would make them tea himself. His offer was gentle, almost caring, but suddenly he noticed that the girl was not moving from her place and had stopped as if frozen with surprise. Stefania explained that she couldn't move because the master's magic was affecting her here. The master directed his magic straight at her, not allowing her to take a single step, and it was felt even from a distance. He then told Yuchi to return the girl to her place, to remove the magic from her, and allow her to move freely. Yuchi decided to play a little and asked what exactly he should put back, as if testing the reaction. This was done with a slight mockery to tease the situation a little and see how seriously it would be taken. The master was already showing signs of irritation. His face darkened, and it became clear that his patience was running out. The situation was quickly turning into a real nightmare for everyone present. The tension in the room was growing. The girl was scared and immediately understood what needed to be done. She quickly said that she understood the requirements and carefully put the cake back in place, trying not to cause additional anger and not to aggravate the situation. Stefania was surprised when she realized that Yuchi wanted the cake to stay exactly where it was. It was unexpected, because she expected something completely different, and now the situation began to seem a little strange and unpredictable to her. She felt that maybe she should leave too, like Yuchi. Her inner tension was growing, and she began to doubt the correctness of her presence in this situation, trying to find a way out of the difficult situation. Suddenly, she noticed that the gentleman started doing something with the cake, as if he was going to eat it or change something. This surprised her, because this had never happened before, and now she watched his every move with anxiety. She was in complete shock, not believing her eyes. The gentleman actually tasted the cake that she had prepared herself. This caused her a mixture of joy and surprise, because she did not even expect such attention. The girl wondered if the gentleman liked the taste of the cake. It was important to her, because she had put a lot of effort into it and wanted to hear his assessment, although she was afraid of disappointment. The gentleman said calmly that the cake was not bad without showing too much emotion, but without denying that he liked it. This short remark sounded like a silent approval, which meant a lot. It was important to Stefania that her favorite character actually tasted and approved of the food she had prepared. It gave her strength and confidence, because such a small gesture meant a lot to her. Stefania was in seventh heaven, and almost didn't believe that this was happening in reality, as if she was still sleeping, and everything around her was a dream. Her heart sang with joy and delight. He asked if she had really prepared the dish herself, and the girl confirmed it without hesitation, recalling with slight pride how carefully she had selected the ingredients and prepared every step. Stefania also mentioned that Yuchi helped her a little with the preparation, and without his support, she would not have managed it so quickly and neatly. His help was unnoticeable but valuable. The girl decided to ask permission to cook in his kitchen from now on, hoping that she would be allowed to demonstrate her culinary skills more often there next to him. In addition, she was going to treat him to her sweets sometimes, to please the gentleman with small, pleasant surprises and make his days a little brighter. The gentleman replied that he did not mind, because she really managed to cook deliciously, and he appreciated her efforts and desire to show care through food. Stefania was truly grateful for his kind words, and smiled, feeling her soul fill with warmth and self-confidence. She realized that she had managed to truly please Mr. Chenyel himself, and this thought warmed her more than any fire. But deep down, the girl understood that she didn't know how much time she had left to cook for him and please him with her attention, because fate could end at any moment. Her feelings for him were so strong that she enjoyed simply watching him eat. In that quiet moment, she found joy and meaning. Suddenly, the girl turned to the gentleman and said that she had one important request that she would like to voice personally, despite the excitement and the unusualness of the situation for her. When Yuchi asked what kind of wish she wanted to express, two different thoughts immediately popped into his head, either of which could completely change the course of their conversation. The first thought was about preparing some kind of sweet treat, and the second was about a more personal and deeper desire that concerned their relationship and feelings. The girl admitted that during their meetings, she would like to be able to openly express her emotions and feelings towards him without hiding her tenderness. It is a desire to share her warmth and love with the person she truly loves with all her heart. And when he asked again, she confirmed, adding that if it was inconvenient for him, she would understand. She also stressed that she was in no way going to expect any reciprocal action from him or make him feel obligated in any way. Yuchi replied that if she really wanted this, then he saw no reason to refuse, because it was a natural desire, and he was ready to accept her feelings. The girl was very happy with this agreement, and hopefully asked if he really thought so, and if she was joking with herself. The gentleman replied that this was nothing compared to how she had boldly stolen his first kiss, and for him, it was much more important and would be remembered forever. The girl immediately blushed and hastened to explain that she had not planned such a step at all, and in no way wanted to embarrass or offend him. She expressed regret for what had happened and promised that it would not happen again, trying to convince him of the sincerity of her words and intentions to improve. Her voice sounded restrained and heavy. The girl suggested that they sign a marriage contract where she would agree not to touch him and stay away so as not to create problems and maintain distance between them. However, the gentleman calmly stated that he didn't care, and his words left her in complete shock. She didn't expect such indifference and internally lost her bearings. He noted that they would probably be able to do without a contract at all, implying that no formalities would change the essence of their relationship and situation. Moreover, this agreement will not last long. Its effect will be short-lived and most likely will not have any meaning in the end. The gentleman added that the execution of the return contract would take longer than she would spend within the castle walls, which emphasized the temporary nature of their relationship. Their relationship would last only 2 months. That's how long she would be here under her contract, and initially, this situation was beneficial only to her. She was lucky that the master allowed her to stay in the castle, otherwise she would have had to look for other ways and conditions for her existence. She agreed with his words and promised to make an effort not to keep her distance from him and not to cause any more inconvenience. In addition, the girl asked him to forget about her selfish request, hoping for understanding, and that he would not remember it in the future. She thought he would just take her word for it, but inside, she no longer had any desire to feel ashamed or embarrassed about what was happening. It was important to her not to feel vulnerable anymore. She said that in that case, she would leave to give him a chance to rest. Her voice was calm, as if she herself had convinced herself that it was better not to disturb him and to give him space to recuperate. She started to walk away, but suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to say something important. She decided to go back so as not to leave anything unsaid and not to leave unanswered questions that could remain in the air. She reminded him that he had spent several days in bed, resting due to the influence of the full moon. This explained his weakness and reluctance to move, and she wanted him to know that she had noticed and understood. She was genuinely happy that she could become a support for him, and that her support became something important and necessary for him. It was a small but significant sign that she could really help. With that, she turned away and headed for the exit, confident that she had done all she could, and now it was time to give him space. She was ready to leave everything as it was and go. He suddenly addressed her, causing her to feel instantly awkward and embarrassed. He said her name again, and it brought her back to reality, making her feel unsure. She turned and saw that he was already standing very close to her, much closer than she expected. It was confusing and made her wonder what would happen next. Seeing him so close, she became frightened and thought that the gentleman might want something important or urgent. Her heart began to beat faster, and she began to prepare herself for what she would hear. He said that he was leaving for the northern lands in a week, and added that she would go with him, leaving her no opportunity to refuse or object. Stefania was genuinely surprised, but pulling herself together, she noted that she was not against it, although she was very interested in why exactly he wanted to take her with him. To this, he replied with a grin that one could ask the rascal about this, and as always, gave no explanations or clarifications. Immediately after these words, he disappeared, left again without explaining the reasons, as if deliberately leaving her guessing and waiting. Later, Yuchi told her that the master had received an official invitation to the coronation of the new ruler of the northern lands. Just recently, the king and first principal of the kingdom died unexpectedly, and now the second principal must ascend to the throne. Stefania was shocked to hear about the sudden death of the rulers, and Yuchi added that the master should have told her everything himself. But something else tormented her. Why did the gentleman agree to go there, since he usually doesn't like such official events? Yuchi explained that the most important figures of the continent would be gathered at this event, and an invitation for the master was almost inevitable. The guy also mentioned that immediately after the coronation, there should be a gala festive evening for all those invited. Then it began to dawn on her why the gentleman had decided to take her in particular. Now everything began to come together into a clearer picture. After all, if he shows up at the party alone, then not a single representative of the house will miss the chance to attract his attention. However, if she was at that reception, he wouldn't be bored. He was sure that he would be able to spend time calmly knowing that there would be someone nearby, who made him smile. But Stefania still doubted whether she could handle it. She was worried not only about possible mistakes, but also about the burden of expectations that had been hanging over her since the morning. However, the guy noted that there was no need to worry so much. After all, this was just a normal technique. You just need to relax and try to get at least a drop of pleasure from everything that was happening. He gently suggested that she leave all the hassle to the master. Let Chinil sort out all the nuances. She deserved to just be a guest, not an organizer. Stefania awkwardly admitted that maybe the guy was wrong after all. She felt like things weren't that simple, and she had to take some responsibility. He knew it wouldn't be easy if Stefania started getting in the way and worrying about every little thing. Everything could get out of control. In fact, he had something completely different in mind, but he decided not to talk about it for now. Let everything go its own way. The main thing is that she doesn't worry. He just smiled slightly, looking at her, and asked her to enjoy this evening. After all, everything else was no longer her concern. He added that for such an important event, she needs to choose the right outfit, otherwise she will feel insecure. The girl did not argue. She generally agreed. But unfortunately, she really did not have a dress that would suit the occasion. The guy just waved it off, saying that it wasn't a problem at all. They could quickly make an outfit, and taking care of it was now his job. And there shouldn't be any clouds over it. He waved his hand and told her to follow him. Everything was already decided. Now all she had to do was follow him and not think about anything extra. Stefania looked around in confusion, not knowing where they were taking her, but the guy next to her calmly said that they were heading to their magical studio, where special things were created. When they reached the right place, he confidently knocked on the door, and opening it, immediately greeted everyone present inside with warm words. Inside, Stefania noticed a man with bright green hair, who as soon as he saw Yuchi, nodded to him in a friendly manner and came closer. He looked at Stefania and her companion in surprise, then frowned and asked who these people were standing near Yuchi. In response to this, Yuchi smiled broadly and proudly said that the girl in front of him was none other than the bride of their respected master. The green-haired man couldn't contain his surprise and asked in confusion how long he had slept if he had missed such news. He frowned and asked if it was true that this wasn't a prank, to which Yuchi seriously confirmed that it was absolutely real. Then the man muttered that if Yuchi himself said such things, then it really was the truth and couldn't be a joke. Despite this, he admitted that he had no idea how this happened, since he seemed to be cut off from everything that was happening. He admitted that he had not heard a word about this event, and now intends to urgently record the news, so as not to miss it completely. Stefania stood rooted to the spot, amazed by what was happening, not understanding what was going on and how to react to it all. Yuchi said that it was enough to waste time on this strange guy. It was necessary to leave him and focus on a more important matter, which concerned Master Shenyel himself. The girl's name was Lucy. She was a magical seamstress who worked at the palace and had the gift of putting charms into fabrics, creating something more than just clothes. In the original version of the story, it was Lucy who sewed dresses for Angelique for free, since she was unable to pay due to her difficult situation. Lucy seemed like a quiet and modest little thing, but with each new event, she began to open up, especially in communication with Angelica, as if she was looking for warmth. The relationship between them was similar to that between a kind mother and a vulnerable daughter, and Stefani especially enjoyed watching this touching connection. In real life, Lucy turned out to be even sweeter than she was described or imagined. 100 times more charming, as if she had come out of a good fairy tale. Yuchi, of course, was also incredibly charming, but compared to Lucy, his charm seemed to be of a completely different, less airy and gentle nature. Stefania expressed that she was really pleased to meet her, and inside she felt as if they had known each other for a long time. She added that the shirt that Lucy had sewn especially for her turned out to be amazingly beautiful, and expressed her sincere gratitude for such a gift. The girl didn't react in any way, didn't say a word, just silently shifted her gaze from the floor to the lady, as if thinking about something, but not daring to say it out loud. Yuchi then turned to Stefania and calmly explained that Lucy was not the type to open up to others right away, and so her silence should not be taken as rudeness or resentment. However, today he had not come for the sake of conversation. He was worried about another matter, and it was about this matter that he wanted to talk to Lucy, hoping that she would still listen to him. The matter was urgent. In a week, Stephanie had to go to a reception with Master Shenyel, and she needed a suitable dress, which Lucy had to sew. But as soon as they began their discussion, the man with green hair intervened confidently, declaring that he was ready, as if he had been waiting for a long time to be remembered. Everyone turned towards the voice, and Stefania immediately remembered it. It was the guy who not long ago said that he was assigned to prepare a note about her and Mr. Shenyel. And now, without wasting a minute, he opened the window and quickly, almost deftly, caught a bird flying past, as if he had planned it all in advance. Having tied a letter to her paw, he told her to hurry, shouting a short command, and the bird immediately soared into the sky, disappearing into the distance over the rooftops of buildings. Stefania, still surprised, turned to Yuchi, wanting to understand what was happening now, and why all this rush with the letter was necessary. Yuchi immediately hesitated, lowering his eyes guiltily, and asked for forgiveness, admitting that it was difficult for him to find the words, and he was not sure where to start. If someone were to suddenly ask Stefania what exactly she would like to change in her life, without giving her time to think, then she would answer without hesitation that the only right decision would be to stop that strange and unpredictable magician who started it all. At that moment, Stefania had no idea how serious the consequences would be of the news that peace was preparing to release to all corners of the continent without warning anyone in advance. The article claimed that Shaniel Crowley himself, the magician and ruler of the Central Lands, was engaged to the princess of an eastern kingdom who had been exiled, and that this princess was supposedly Stephanie. Seeing the headline, Angelica flushed with rage, unable to understand where such ridiculous rumors could have come from, and who could have come up with such a lie. She was sure that her sister had fled the country on purpose to find a husband in the Central Lands, and now this nonsense only added fuel to the fire. Her anger seemed uncontrollable. She could not understand how this was even possible, and her mother, meanwhile, tried to persuade Angelica to calm down. The mother gently noted that if Angelica continued to be so nervous, she might get worse, hinting at old health problems. Angelica snapped that she hadn't been feeling any worse for many years, and she didn't understand why her mother didn't blame Stefania at all for what had happened. Stefania simply disappeared, leaving a farewell note in the studio, and not saying a word about the plans, as if they no longer meant anything to her. When she left, she did not leave them a penny, and now she and her mother were barely making ends meet, eating almost nothing, suffering from hunger day after day. Moreover, she took away with her Angelica's best dress, which she had been saving for a special occasion, without consulting or asking permission. Angelica couldn't understand why Stefania always had an easier, brighter, and freer life, why she took everything, leaving her only disappointment. Her mother tried to console her, repeating that she shouldn't take everything so seriously, because sooner or later everything would get better. However, her anxiety did not leave her even for a moment. She begged him not to hold a grudge against Stefania, because she probably did it not out of malice, but for a reason that lay much deeper, perhaps because of her. The mother remembered that on the day of her departure, she had said 2 harsh words to Stephanie without thinking how much they could hurt, and now she was tormented by a feeling of guilt. She was sure that this was the last straw for her sister. Stefania simply could not stand it, and decided to leave without explaining the reasons to anyone. But she knew Stephanie's character. She doesn't hold grudges for long. A little time will pass, and she will definitely return home as soon as she feels that she is ready. Angelica reminded that there was an agreement about marriage with the ruler of the Central Lands. But everything changed abruptly, and now everything seems confusing. All they can say is that she became close to that cruel ruler who lived in seclusion for many years, did not communicate with anyone, and inspired fear in everyone around him. Angelica brushed off these rumors. She was sure that Stefania had never met him, and she would not have agreed to become the wife of such a man. She agreed with her mother with relief. It really was impossible. Stefania would never get involved with such a loner, even if he was powerful. With a gentle smile, she repeated that Stefania would be back soon anyway. She always came back, and this time would be no exception. The green-haired man was happy. There had been no big news for a long time, and the lady's appearance was a real find. He was grateful to her for this reason. At this time, Stefania, hiding under the hood, decided to leaf through the latest issues of the newspapers. It was important for her to know what exactly they were writing about her in the city. Yuchi had no doubt that Rome would do just that. As soon as he learned the details, he immediately began to scribble down an article, as if he had been waiting for this opportunity all morning and already had the title in his head. A hot sensation could not wait. Such news had to be spread immediately, without letting the ardor die down, Rome believed. The sooner the louder the name would be heard in the world. Stefania, amazed by everything that was happening, looked at the gentleman, and with restraint but interest, noted that she really became curious about what exactly he had done. Peace said proudly that he had spread the news. But for the lady, it was a blow. She had not expected such a scale of publicity and felt confused. He calmly reminded them that the messenger was under his complete control, and it was he who decided what news the entire continent read without asking anyone's permission. The lady asked in amazement if it was true that he had actually sent a newspaper with this news throughout the continent, reaching even the most remote lands. After these words, she felt real horror, because now everyone knew about their engagement, not only the inhabitants of the Central Land, but also those from whom she tried to hide the truth. The Eastern lands, with their gossip and cold criticism, also already knew, and the lady understood that there was no way back. The rumor spread quickly. But it wasn't just that. Her heart sank at the thought that the news would reach both her mother and Angelica, and that was what she feared most of all. It was a real nightmare. Now, literally, everyone knew about the relationship between Madame Stephanie and Monsieur Cheniel. The secret that she had kept for so long was revealed to everyone. Peace, without wasting time, introduced himself to the lady. He informed her that she was now responsible for distributing news throughout the continent on behalf of the chief mage. He called his hobby information gathering. It was for this reason that Master Cheniel entrusted him with the most important task of spreading news throughout all lands. He noted that if she ever urgently needed important information, she could turn to him for help without hesitation. The lady asked with interest how he knew that she was an exiled princess from the Eastern Kingdom, since she had not told anyone about it. She didn't even have time to say her name, and he only answered her with a light, almost mocking smile, as if it was obvious. He then noted with obvious pleasure that her ladyship had seriously underestimated his ability to obtain information from any source. The girl was stunned. He also added that he had accumulated a lot of questions for her, and he did not intend to hide it at all. He was especially interested in how exactly she met the master, who was the first to show feelings, and how Cheniel himself reacted to her royal origin. He literally bombarded her with questions one after another, and the situation began to heat up until Yuchi intervened. He firmly asked Peace to stop bothering the lady and take his mind off her. Upon hearing this, Peace quickly softened, looked down, and apologized. Not hiding his awkwardness, he admitted that he had been obliged to ask these questions and simply could not help himself. Yuchi calmly explained that Peace had no evil intent. As soon as he sensed a sensation, he would lose control and become as unstoppable as a hurricane. This is what happened last time. He published an urgent news item and sent it to all the editors without anyone's approval. Peace responded by noting that there was no secret in the story at all, which meant he had every right to be interested in the details, especially if they concerned my lady. Yuchi made an important point. If he was going to write an interview with the master's fiancée, he should have asked permission from the master himself first. Peace only slumped his shoulders and sighed heavily, declaring that it was impossible to come to any agreement with the master. He was stubborn as a rock, but then he narrowed his eyes slyly and said that perhaps he would be lucky with his bride. She was clearly kinder and more accommodating. The girl herself looked a little embarrassed and worried because she guessed that this conversation would lead to a wave of new questions. However, Yuchi told Pisu not to distract her anymore, because they did not come because of him, but to talk to Lucy about an important matter. He had to focus on his work and stop spreading unnecessary rumors and information among people, which only interfered and distracted from important matters. Peace explained that since they had already come to Lucy, he would not disturb them and would leave them alone so as not to create any obstacles or inconveniences. Yuchi expressed his desire for Lucy to make a dress for Stephanie, emphasizing the importance of this order and trusting the skill of the seamstress at Cheniel Castle. Yuchi then noticed that Lucy wanted to take Stephanie's measurements to make the dress fit perfectly, and that was the only step before work began. He said that he would wait here, and that Stephanie needed to go with Lucy so that she could calmly take all the necessary measurements. With the help of magic, Lucy carefully and accurately took all the measurements from the girl without causing her any discomfort and quickly completing the process. During the entire time she worked, Lucy never said a word, remaining silent and focused on her work, as if it was a habit for her. However, in novels and stories, where Angelica and Stephanie were present, conversations began immediately, but here an unusual silence reigned. Finally, Lucy quietly said that everything was ready. It was the only word she uttered the entire time, returning calm to the atmosphere. Lucy's voice was soft and silky, so gentle that Stefania couldn't even imagine what it could be like until she heard it herself. It was the most pleasant event of the whole day for Stefania, such a small but very important moment that warmed her soul. Suddenly, Lucy noticed that Stephanie had an unusual and interesting smell, which caused the girl a slight surprise and curiosity. Stefania was surprised because she never used perfume and realized that Lucy probably caught her natural scent that always emanated from her. Lucy had a very unusual property, and the lady decided to find out what kind of aroma she had. Becoming interested in this unusual smell, Lucy answered directly and unexpectedly, "Stefania smells like rotten corpses," which shocked the lady. The lady was so frightened that she immediately asked Lucy what exactly she meant and what she was talking about. Lucy knew the secret that Stephanie had only a short time left to live, and this knowledge weighed heavily on her. Suddenly, Lucy turned and walked away, but Stephanie tried to stop her, trying to understand the situation. Stefania was completely confused and could not understand what exactly was happening around her. At that moment, Magdalena Lively entered the room and began asking Peace about the news published in the newspaper. At the sight of Magdalena, Stefania felt a strong fear and anxiety. Her heart began to beat faster. Magdalena could not believe what she heard. She learned that the gentleman was engaged, and with disbelief, she asked the green-haired Pease what kind of nonsense he had written there. Peace confidently said that he wrote only the truth, since the information was given to him by Yuchi, who never lies and is always honest. Magdalena was shocked and demanded that they explain to her in detail what all this meant and why such news appeared. Yuchi, on the contrary, said that he does not intend to explain the situation to anyone and sees no point in talking. At that moment, Stefania herself entered the room, and Yuchi was very happy to notice her appearance. He asked if they had finished their work yet, and the girl confirmed without hesitation that the work was done. At that moment, the atmosphere hung slightly tensely in the air. After that, he announced that he had to get ready for a reception that was to take place very soon, and therefore he had to leave immediately. He stood up and headed for the exit, leaving behind a slight trace of haste. Magdalena approached Stefania with obvious interest, her voice sounding with notes of suspicion. She asked if she was the very same exiled princess who had arrived from the east, about whom everyone was talking secretly and openly. Stefania rejected this statement, calling everything that was happening absurd and nonsense, as if she did not want to even consider such a possibility, as if trying to protect herself from offensive rumors and gossip. Magdalena, laughing, declared that the gentleman would never have chosen such an inconspicuous and unprepossessing girl as a wife, and that there could be no talk of any princess. All this was just fiction. She added that she herself had already realized that this girl had probably bribed Pease to write such nonsense and spread these rumors because without money, nothing happens by chance in their world. Magdalena remarked with disdain that as expected of an Eastern princess, she would hardly be able to go far, as if the girl was doomed to remain in the shadow of her roots and unable to change her fate. She said the royal family from the East is known for its passion for luxury and wealth, often forgetting about those who are lower in social status and suffer from poverty. There is a huge gap between rich and poor in their kingdom, forcing many residents to leave the eastern lands in search of a better life and hope for change. Therefore, in the story, the main character teams up with Mr. Crowley, a master of magic, to fight together for a better future and try to change the established order. Their goal is to change their kingdom so that she can become the new ruler and lead the lands of the East to prosperity, where justice and equality become a reality, and not just a dream. She was right in only one thing. She really did marry the gentleman, guided mainly by her own selfish desires and interests, without thinking about the feelings of others. However, the words she said to the gentleman were sincere, and she would not allow anyone to think otherwise, because for her, this was an important moment of honor. Despite the fact that Magdalena causes her fear and anxiety, the fear only intensifies the feeling of the meaninglessness of everything that is happening. Stefania asked herself why Magdalena cared at all, whether the gentleman was engaged to someone or not, since it was none of her business. If Magdalena doubted that Stefania was his fiancée, she could go with him and ask the gentleman himself about it to dispel doubts. True, Stefania understood that the gentleman would hardly waste time on explanations in front of the emptiness and mistrust that emanated from Magdalena. Stefania noticed that Magdalena was not doing a good job of playing the villain, and at the same time, she really wanted people to start looking at her with exactly that expression from now on. Once she started this game, she decided to go to the end and show Magdalena her place, not allowing herself to be humiliated or retreat any longer. In addition, Stefania realized one important thing. Magdalena probably has feelings for Mr. Cheniel, which explains her behavior and jealousy. Magdalena was filled with rage when she heard the words of her mistress, who noted with regret that the husband she so longed for was now engaged to another. This was a real insult to hers. Stefania calmly pointed out that Magdalena was late because the gentleman now belonged to her and no one else. This statement only added fuel to the fire of tension between them. Since she became the bride of this gentleman, Stefania had to show everyone how strong and sincere her love was, and no obstacles could weaken it. No evil bully or ill-wisher could shake her feelings, which only grew stronger and deeper with each passing day. Magdalena's outburst of rage turned into physical aggression. She swung sharply at the girl, trying to show her indignation and despair. Magdalena harshly called her rival a piece of trash, which forced Yuchi to intervene using magic to stop the conflict, warning her that she had crossed the line. At this point, someone loudly demanded that Yuchi let Magdalena go, calling him a damn runt. The tension between all participants reached its limit. Yuchi, remaining calm, replied that he was not going to explain his actions to this stupid girl, because she would not be able to understand why he supported Stefania anyway. Magdalena furiously demanded that Yuchi let her go, not wanting to tolerate his interference any longer, her anger and resentment growing stronger. In a sudden movement, Magdalena accidentally scratched Stefania with her fingernail, causing her to immediately start bleeding, and the situation quickly escalated to the extreme. Yuchi was very angry, not understanding how someone dared to touch Stefania with their dirty hands. His anger was directed specifically at those who dared to do this to her. He clearly considered it a great insult. Magdalena, noticing the increase in magic, asked in surprise what was happening and why Yuchi had started using such power. Her voice was filled with anxiety because magic in such quantities could be dangerous. She warned that if he did not reduce the power of the spell, her hand might simply explode from the strain. Magdalena was ready to tell the master about it, so that he could intervene and stop the situation. Yuchi, ignoring the warnings, challenged her to try. He was sure that she would not be able to resist and leave him alive, demonstrating her strength and determination not to give in. At that moment, Peace approached them sternly, warning them that if they did not calm down now, he would tell the entire kingdom about all their dirty secrets, having incriminating information in his hands. There was clearly some disagreement between them. Peace was sure that the master would be the one to clarify the relationship and answer who Lady Stefania Yuchi really was, which only added to the tension. Despite this, Yuchi stated that he didn't care, because his main concern right now was Miss Stefania's safety, and he wasn't going to be distracted by other issues. Peace, in turn, began calling the master, saying that Lady Stephanie wanted to see him, which meant that the situation could soon take an even more serious turn. Stefania was shocked by what had happened. It seemed incredible to her that the master could ever believe such absurdities and interfere. It was so unexpected that she could not believe her eyes. But at that very moment, the master appeared right there, as if summoned by some inner voice, and his sudden appearance stirred up everyone around. No one expected to see him here. He immediately asked what had happened, and everyone around froze in surprise. No one expected the master to come so quickly and take an interest in the situation personally. Magdalena approached him without hesitation and began to tell him, trying to convince the master to listen to her carefully so that he would understand the seriousness of what was happening. She explained that the little bastard had almost injured her arm with his magic, and that was why the situation was so serious and required the intervention of a master. The master first looked carefully at Magdalena, then turned his gaze to Stefania, and then to Yuchi, trying to understand which of them was telling the truth and how events developed. He slowly approached Stefania, who stood there in confusion and did not understand why he had come so close to her and what he was going to do next. The master noticed a small scratch on her face that caught his attention. It was a strange mark that seemed important to solving what had happened. He took a closer look and asked where she got that scratch, as if trying to understand what was behind the damage. Stefania was at a loss and did not know what to do because the question put her in a difficult position. She was confused and could not choose the right words. She understood that if she told the truth, the master might punish Magdalena, but if she lied and said that the scratch was caused by the maid, it would only anger the master even more. At this point, Yuchi himself admitted that it was Magdalena who hit Stefania unexpectedly, revealing the truth and changing the course of events. Stefania was scared to the depths of her soul because she could not understand why Yuchi decided to reveal this information and what the master would do now. Magdalena immediately began to prove that she was completely innocent and had done nothing wrong. She tried to convince everyone that the accusations were unfair and unlawful. She kept repeating that her actions were pure and blameless, that she had done nothing that could cause displeasure. Her voice was insistent and full of determination. At that moment, her attention was drawn to the cold, piercing gaze of Mr. Chenyol, which seemed to drill right through her, demonstrating the full depth of his anger. He was genuinely angry, and Magdalena knew how dangerous his anger was. She felt that the situation was close to the limit, and this could not help but be alarming. Stefania quickly realized that it was necessary to intervene urgently and try to stop Mr. Chenille before the situation got out of control. She was about to get someone's attention to get help, but everyone around her seemed to be frozen and did not take any action, as if paralyzed by fear. No one was going to intervene and stop the gentleman, so Stefania understood that she would have to act herself despite the danger. Although she disliked and irritated Magdalena, Stefania could not allow Mr. Chenille to harm anyone or to commit murder. At this moment, Yuchi noticed that Stefania was about to do something drastic and rushed towards the gentleman to stop him and prevent further violence. Yuchi said he didn't expect this turn of events and Mr. Chenille's arrival at this moment, which added tension to the situation. He also expressed gratitude to the gentleman for his concern and intervention, which appeared to be an attempt to ease the situation. Meanwhile, Magdalena confidently assured everyone that she was okay, and did so with a wide and sincere smile, trying to calm those around her. She felt as if the awkwardness was about to reach its limit, and she almost wished for it all to end, as if death could relieve the painful feeling of growing discomfort. Having decided that Stefania would definitely pay for what had happened, she was determined not to let it go without consequences, and to show that it would not go away so easily. Without wasting a second, she rushed away, trying to get as far away as possible before the master could intervene and stop her actions. Luckily, everything worked out. Stefania was able to get out of the awkward situation without serious consequences, and she was lucky that everything went smoothly. Suddenly, the gentleman unexpectedly picked her up in his arms. She had never expected anything like this, and this act took her completely by surprise. He carefully placed the girl on the sofa and immediately asked someone to bring a first aid kit to treat the wound and help her. Yuchi noticed that they didn't actually have a first aid kit, but he assumed that there might be something similar stored in the basement that would be useful for first aid. However, Yuchi was adamant. He was not going to go down to this godforsaken and dangerous place, so he suggested that Peace go with him. Peace, after some thought, agreed to go, but asked if Lucy would like to join them and help. Lucy, without hesitation, offered her hand and decided to go with them, understanding the importance of what was happening and the need for support. Stefania admitted that there was no need to stress out so much about her because her wound was just a regular scratch and did not require excessive care. However, when she met the master's gaze, her words were cut off, and she fell silent, sensing something more than just concern in his gaze. She apologized and admitted that she completely relied on them, hoping that they would be able to help in a difficult situation and not let her down. This added tension because a lot depended on their actions. Yuchi assured them that they would return soon and suggested that they have a good time to gather strength and prepare for further work. His words sounded calm, but there was a sense of seriousness in them. Peace noted that Yuchi was right in his predictions. Yuchi, smiling, recalled that he always said that they would succeed despite the difficulties and doubts of those around them. Peace admitted that he initially doubted how credible the article would be, but now he realized that the story was indeed plausible and worthy of attention. Now, Peace wanted to know more details about how exactly the relationship between them developed, because first meetings always hide many interesting moments. Yuchi added that after they completed the measurements, a new chapter in their story began full of unexpected events and changes. Stefania came around the corner, looking scared and worried like something big had happened, and she didn't know how to deal with it. Yuchi assumed that something might have happened to Lucy since they had not been seen for a long time, and this caused concern among everyone around. Lucy shook her head in denial, and Yuchi realized that there was actually no reason to worry, even though the situation might seem tense. He noted that Stefania is a very kind and sensitive girl, and therefore she cannot be treated badly or offended because her kindness requires respect. Peace confirmed the words and added that she needed to be especially gentle and attentive. His advice sounded serious, as if he himself was concerned that the situation would not escalate. Lucy merely glanced to the side and did not say a word, but it was clear that she agreed with the opinion expressed, although she did not voice it out loud. They urgently needed to find the first aid kit that the master had asked for. Everyone was trying to understand with interest what they were talking about now, because it seemed quite important and even intriguing. Yuchi insisted that Peace not even try to eavesdrop, but for some reason he himself did not share the prohibition and seemed no less curious, although he tried not to show it. Yuchi noted to himself that he thought the master was simply awkwardly trying to flirt with his fiancée, and that explained the strange behavior of both of them in the conversation. In the end, Yuchi and the others left, leaving the master and the girl alone, probably because she was too nervous and needed a moment of peace. The girl clearly felt a strong fatigue coming over her, as if all her strength was gradually leaving her, but she tried not to show it. She really wanted to lie down and rest, at least a little, but she understood that she should not show her weaknesses in front of the master so as not to seem vulnerable. So she apologized to the gentleman again, trying to speak with restraint and politeness, hoping that her words would help smooth over the tension. The gentleman looked surprised, just looked at her, without saying a word, as if trying to understand what was hidden behind her behavior. He silently took her head and gently placed it on his lap without saying a word. There was a tenderness and care in this gesture that surprised Stefania. She only managed to say that she was a little tired and wanted to rest, hoping that she would be understood. Her voice was quiet and tired, and her thoughts were still confused from her experiences. He replied that she needed to rest, nothing more. Stefania tried to explain that she meant something else, but he left her words without comment. The girl never expected that the gentleman would allow someone to lay his head on his lap. It was something unexpected, almost intimate and very touching for her. Suddenly, he said her name quietly again, as if he wanted to remind her of something important or to attract special attention. Stefania raised her head, trying to understand what exactly he wanted to tell her. Curiosity and caution mixed in her eyes. He asked her to extend her left hand calmly and confidently, as if performing a long thought-out ritual. She was surprised, but obediently raised her left hand, not understanding what would happen next, but feeling that it was important. At that moment, he put a ring on her hand, elegant and meaningful, like a symbol of something new and special. Stefania was stunned. The ring shook her so much that she jumped up from her seat, not hiding her amazement and excitement. The ring was incredibly beautiful, and the stone sparkling on it resembled the color of the master's eyes, like a piece of his soul. He explained that the ring had protective spheres on it, and that she should always keep it with her because it would become her amulet and strength. The girl said that she understood the importance of this gift and promised to wear the ring always, to cherish it as a sign of trust and support. It was the first time she had been given such a gift, an object with which she could protect herself in dangerous situations. It was something new and meaningful, because before that, she had always been defenseless. It was no wonder that this was so important. Among wizards, she was ordinary and vulnerable. She seemed like a lamb surrounded by predators, which made her position extremely dangerous and fragile. That was why the doctor warned that where she was going, danger would lurk at every step, and she shouldn't underestimate the seriousness of what was happening around her. But she was only supposed to stay here for a short time, so where exactly she ended up didn't matter much. The final outcome was inevitable. Her fate was already decided, and no matter where she went, everything would end the same way in the end, with no way to change the outcome. In her last moments, she just wanted to be close to the master, and was sincerely grateful for this valuable and touching gift that gave her hope. She promised that she would carefully preserve this gift, understanding its importance and symbolic significance in the current situation. The gentleman listened to her attentively and asked her to now return and rest in peace, showing his understanding and support. The girl said that she did not agree with this and felt much better thanks to the gift he gave her. It really lifted her spirits and gave her strength. She clarified what was more important to her. Would it be possible to behave with him just as decisively if other girls started pestering him or her? The gentleman answered without hesitation that of course she could do so, and he would have absolutely no objection to her actions in such cases. Hearing this, the girl was very happy, because now she knew that he would not get angry, and if necessary, she would calmly put those girls in their place. She promised that she would try to make sure that no one would ever bully her or make her feel uncomfortable again, which became very important to her. Then, he touched the cut on her cheek again, as if checking how the wound was healing, and his touch was gentle and careful. The girl did not understand at all why he was doing this, and once again felt embarrassed by his closeness and attention. He said that they should train together, hinting that they needed to prepare for their shared future and challenges. At first, the girl didn't understand what exactly he was talking about, but he explained that she wanted everyone to believe in their love because no one would believe it if she looked like a tomato from embarrassment in public. The girl was in complete shock that it was he who made such an offer, which she never expected to hear from him. It turned out to be a real test for her. Stefania thought that they would quickly cope with the training, but she told everything in such detail that she herself almost collapsed from fatigue and worries. She just needed to express her feelings for him the way she always did, openly and sincerely, without hiding anything important inside. She had a hard time collecting her thoughts, tried to calm down a little, and not show how much she was blushing from excitement and surprise. The girl agreed to everything he proposed, and immediately apologized for showing such boldness and freedom without warning. But then she hugged him, could not resist, and confessed that she loved him, expressing her deepest and most sincere feelings. She came very close to him, almost touching him, not hiding her tremulous excitement and trust. After this, she said that she thought that was enough, although her face was burning with embarrassment and inner excitement. The girl did not understand at all why he was still silent, and did not respond to her confession, remaining mysterious and mute. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and someone asked permission to enter, breaking the tense and important atmosphere. The lady was frightened, but still allowed him to enter, trying not to show her anxious feelings and confusion. Yuchi entered, hoping that everything had gone smoothly for them here, and that nothing bad had happened that could cause harm. She replied that nothing bad had happened, and noticed that the gentleman had gone out somewhere, leaving them alone with their thoughts. Yuchi said that they needed to take a closer look at the scratch on her arm to see how serious it was and whether she needed help. His voice was serious and focused. The lady agreed without objection, and Yuchi noticed a ring on her hand. This caused him slight surprise and interest, because such jewelry rarely just happens. He noted that the girl had a wedding ring on her ring finger. This was unexpected for her, and she even asked again to make sure she heard correctly. Yuchi clarified that the ring was indeed on the finger, that is traditionally considered a symbol of marriage. The girl looked a little embarrassed at that moment. She hastened to explain that this was not entirely true, since the gold ring had been given to her by a gentleman, and it was more of a formal gift than a symbol of love. Yuchi noted to himself that the ring was still a gift from her fiancé, but the girl seemed to have already forgotten about it, or was trying to hide her feelings. The novel she had recently read said that wedding rings were usually worn on the left ring finger, but the girl understood that in her case, this gesture did not have the usual meanings. Yuchi said that she couldn't get away from this fact, and the girl couldn't understand why it affected her so deeply and painfully. The guy also noticed that the craftsman had chosen a truly rare and unusual piece for the engagement ring, which spoke of the significance of the gift. Stefania said that the gentleman mentioned that the ring had protective magic on it, and she was surprised at how rare such a piece of jewelry was. The guy noticed that before starting, it was worth checking whether everything was working as it should. He looked at the mechanism, twisted something, and frowned, as if anticipating a possible malfunction. The girl, without hesitation, agreed to his proposal. Then he said that first, they would treat her a little, and then they would begin the test to avoid unforeseen problems. But suddenly, a strange noise cut through the air. The lady did not immediately understand what it was. The sound seemed unnatural to her, as if it came from the depths of the dungeons or from another world. Yuchi calmly told her not to worry, but the lady couldn't calm down just like that. Her heart sank with anxiety, because this noise could mean something really dangerous. However, Yuchi confidently noted that all this had nothing to do with them. It was as if he knew in advance that no matter what happened, it would not affect them directly. The bird that served as a messenger reported that the source of the explosion was a magical laboratory. It became clear that something serious had happened inside, and the consequences could be unpredictable. Stefania recognized the bird's voice as Pease's. His intonations were too familiar to be confused with anyone else's. He always spoke especially quickly and clearly. Yuchi immediately stated that Pisu should go there himself, because he and Stefania were currently busy with something else, and simply could not be distracted. It seemed that almost the entire laboratory had been damaged by the explosion. The walls were broken, the glass was shattered, and the magic crystals were scattered, leaving behind shimmering fragments. Yuichi admitted that they would have to personally inspect everything. The situation was too serious to rely only on reports from afar. Verification was required. He added that Stefania could come with him if she really wanted to. She had the option to stay, but also the chance to see everything with her own eyes. The girl was slightly surprised by his offer, but quickly pulled herself together. Curiosity and the desire to help overcame her doubts, and she resolutely agreed. They headed towards the lab, and when they entered, they saw complete destruction. Everything around them was broken, and even the air seemed to vibrate from the recent magical surge. Everyone in the lab began to hastily apologize to Mr. Yuchi, assuring him that they had not meant to set him up, and that what had happened was a pure accident and a ridiculous misunderstanding. It was a magical laboratory built specifically for the development and research of unique magical tools, where gifted wizards and artisans from all over the continent worked. Apparently, during one of the experiments, someone made a mistake, and the magical instrument they were working with suddenly detonated right in the room. Yuchi, knowing how dangerous magic was, especially in the wrong hands, calmly asked how many times this month they had caused such destruction and chaos. He understood perfectly well that no one wanted trouble, but he emphasized that they should be much more careful and take their work more seriously, especially with such artifacts. He reminded them that he had warned them before asking them to be careful and watch how exactly they handled unstable magical elements. The workers agreed with every word Yuchi said. They nodded, swallowed their tears, stood tense, and were afraid to move, because they knew that they had seriously offended him. Yuchi did not want to punish anyone, but noted that he would still have to report this unpleasant incident to Master Sheniel. Otherwise, it would not be possible to hide the consequences. But as soon as he mentioned this, all the men turned pale and began to beg him for mercy, fearing the master's wrath much more than even an explosion or a reprimand. They fell to their knees, begging to be told to anyone but Master Sheniel. Their faces were pale. Fear pierced them to the depths of their souls, and they did not hide their despair. The guy who was watching their fear said with a cold grin that if they quickly disappeared from this place, perhaps he would remain silent and not report what happened to the master. The men breathed a sigh of relief, but the guy abruptly added that now the castle was inhabited not by just someone, but by the norm itself, and this changed everything, including the rules and behaviors. From now on, he said they must exercise extreme caution in any magical research. Even an accidental mistake could cost them and others dearly. They looked at each other in surprise when they heard these words and asked again to make sure they understood correctly, because it sounded too unexpected. Joy flashed in their eyes when they saw the girl. They realized that before them was most likely the bride of the master himself. This explained the strict measures and special attention to her. It seemed that now everyone who lived in the castle really understood who she was. There was no longer a secret. Her status was revealed, and the attitude towards her immediately changed. Stefania folded her arms and realized that she would have to act decently now. Everything had changed, and playing the role of the simple guy, Ash, was no longer possible. She introduced herself calmly, giving her name Stefania, and added that she was pleased to meet him. Yuchi stood nearby and said that the master treasured his bride very much, and if anything happened to her due to their fault, they would be held accountable. He noted that since they had finally understood everything this time, he himself would take on the task of repairing the wall, although usually this should be done by completely different people. After all, according to the rules and regulations, it was the local workers or low-ranking magicians who had to monitor such things and restore everything in a timely manner. The men perked up, praised Yuchi, said that he was the best of them all, and sincerely thanked him for the help he had provided so quickly. Using magic, he restored the wall almost instantly because his strength was close to the level of a master, and such tasks did not require effort from him. Stefania stood in complete amazement. What she saw seemed impossible to her, as if it were from a legend and not from ordinary life. After this, the guy turned to the flowers, said that they were leaving, and asked that no more explosions occur unless absolutely necessary. The men nodded, said that they understood him, would try, and that they were very glad that Yuchi and Mrs. Stefania herself had visited them today. When they went outside, Stefania noticed that Yuchi's face had changed, as if something had frozen in it, as if he had caught a strange signal. She asked if everything was okay, and the guy replied that he had a strange, disturbing feeling, as if something was coming. At that moment, a bird flew up to them and conveyed an urgent message. Stefania was acquitted, but something important had happened in the main hall. Peace asked in bewilderment why Yuchi had such a reaction, since he was the master's right hand, and should go and fulfill his duties without delay. Yuchi called out loudly to her, reminding her that it was time to leave. He didn't look his best. He looked worried, as if something hadn't gone according to plan, or as he wanted. He quickly approached Stefania, took her hand firmly, and apologized with a slight sigh. He said that they would not be able to test the power or check the ring that day. The surprised girl asked about the reason, to which the guy answered, with a tired look, that there was so much work to do around the castle today that he simply did not have time to breathe. As he said, they really didn't make it to the training ground. All the time was spent on carrying out endless assignments and chores that rained down from the very morning. Even though they hadn't trained, they had to run around the castle a lot, running back and forth, solving small problems as if it were their battle. By evening, the lady felt completely exhausted. She had to run after the tireless Yuchi all day long, and her strength was fading with every minute. She couldn't remember the last time she had been so tired. It had been a long time since her body had known such a load, and with each step, she felt the heaviness in her legs. But Yuchi seemed not to notice the fatigue. For him, it was an ordinary day. His energy did not run out, and it became clear how unusual these wizards were. She had known how different they were before. There had been a difference from the start, like a chasm between them, but that had only been a thought. But now this feeling became especially clear. Today, she felt it for real. The difference not only in strength, but also in endurance. Suddenly, she remembered the ring the gentleman had given her. The gesture came back to her mind like a warm spark, distracting her from the fatigue and worries of the day. Stefania looked down at her hand and smiled. The ring sparkled beautifully on her finger, reminding her of those who supported her despite everything. Unfortunately, she was just an ordinary human and could not keep up with their life full of magic and danger, so the doctor was worried about her because her body could not cope with such stress. But she never imagined in her wildest dreams that the gentleman would give her such an unexpected gift, something that could change everything she knew about herself and the world around her. For this one moment, for this minute of magic and care, it was truly worth going through everything, even being born again into this difficult world. As soon as the ring was on her finger, she felt everything inside clear up, as if the heaviness was going away, and it became easier to breathe, as if someone was hugging her from the inside. But as soon as she took off the ring, a strange feeling crept up on her, unnoticed. Something was wrong, as if her body itself was trying to tell her something. Suddenly, she was overcome by a terrible, unbearable pain, as if everything inside was being torn apart, and in an instant she weakened and almost lost consciousness. She grabbed the ring again with a trembling hand, and at that very second, images of her entire life flashed before her eyes, as if someone had rewinded a film to the very end. At that moment, it seemed to her that death itself was looking at her, and her chest sank with horror. It felt like her time was almost up. The pain was so strong that she simply couldn't stand it. She fell to the floor, curling up in an attempt to relieve at least something, but it only got worse. Her body was breaking with pain. Her heart was constricted with fear, and it seemed that no one in this world could save her, pull her out of this abyss of suffering. She hoped with all her heart that someone would lend a helping hand and save her from this torment, but there was not a single person nearby who cared. Such a person simply does not exist, and she is doomed to suffer alone, immersed in her own torments and hardships, which no one can understand and share with her. Stefania must not forget the fate that is destined for her, and despite the pain, she must continue on her path, not retreating in the face of the trials that lie ahead. The next morning came without sleep because severe pain did not give her peace all night, and despite being tired, she could not fall asleep. However, at this moment, the pain was no longer as excruciating as the previous day, and this eased her condition a little, allowing her to gather her strength at least a little. The ring that stood on the nightstand next to her suddenly appeared in her memory. It seemed like some kind of symbol or support in this difficult moment. She hurried to him and made sure that the ring was okay. It had not lost its shine and was not damaged, which brought her a sense of peace. Feeling relieved, she put the ring back on her hand, feeling as if it brought her protection and confidence, although something inside told her that it was more than just jewelry. Remembering that it was after she took off the ring that the pain returned with renewed vigor, she realized how important it was not to part with it, despite all the doubts. This is why she cannot take off the ring. It has become not just a decoration, but a kind of amulet that holds back the excruciating pain that would otherwise roll in with double force. If she decides to take the ring off again, the pain will return, and it will be stronger than before. So you need to understand why this connection works this way and find the reasons. To understand this mysterious phenomenon, it is necessary to meet Yuchi, a man who can help understand the nature of what is happening. Together with Yuchi, she headed to the magic testing ground, a place where magic could be tested and its effects on the body and mind could be studied in order to find the answer to her questions. The guy said that young talents gather here for training, and her ring is also much stronger than any other, which makes this place ideal for testing his strength and capabilities. This was truly the best place to evaluate how the ring works, as there are constant tests and training sessions going on around it, where you can see all its functions in action and understand how reliable it is. They were met by two guys and several girls, among whom the guy was glad to see Yuchi. He clearly did not expect to meet him here, which added to the unexpectedness of the whole situation. It was a surprise for him to meet Yuchi in this particular place, because he never thought that he would be here, especially in such company. It looked strange and intriguing. What seemed especially unusual was that there was a girl next to him. This surprised everyone even more, who thought that Yuchi was usually alone and did not show such signs of attention. Everyone thought that the girl was their master's fiancée and that they were here together, which added status and seriousness to them in the eyes of those around them. Yuchi confirmed this, saying that it was worth getting to know each other, and the lady also greeted them warmly, showing her goodwill and openness. They noted that the lady was very nice, and this testified to the good taste of their master, who clearly made the right choice of companion. One of the girls noted that the choice was not made based on beauty, and she wondered what brought them here since people usually come here for completely different reasons. The guy warned that this place was very dangerous and that ordinary people shouldn't be here, but Yuchi explained that they came here to check and test the power of this ring in real conditions. Yuchi showed the ring to everyone, and everyone looked at it carefully and with great interest, trying to understand how powerful and unique it really was. It was said that this ring seemed to be made by the master himself, so carefully and meticulously that it could not be otherwise. His work was visible in every detail, as if his soul was put into it. Yuchi confirmed that this was indeed the case. The master had indeed created this ring, infusing it with protective charms. They trusted this item because they knew that the master had made it with genuine concern for the lady. Yuchi asked who among those present wanted to see how the ring displayed its magical properties in practice. It was a challenge, and at the same time, an opportunity to see real craftsmanship. The young man immediately declared that he would not agree to such a danger, because attacking the master's bride was unacceptable, and unacceptable for him in any case. The girl sitting nearby also refused to participate, expressing a categorical unwillingness to expose herself to risk, or to test the ring's magic on herself. Another of the girls preferred to watch from the side, and the last guy remained silent, only nodding his head slightly, showing his unwillingness to interfere in what was happening. Yuchi then turned to Stefania and said that if everyone else refused, he would try himself. This decision caused a slight tension in the room, but he was confident in his abilities. Yuchi asked Stefania to stand in the corner of the room, and she surprised, but obedient went there, taking the indicated place, ready for what was about to happen. He reassured her by explaining that he was not going to use all his magical power, but only a simple spell to demonstrate the ring's effect without unnecessary risk. The girl agreed to these conditions and calmly stepped aside, ready to watch the magic that Yuchi was about to use. Although Stefania was afraid, she still believed that Yuchi would not harm her, because there was a certain connection and trust between them, even despite the danger. Yuchi warned her in advance that he was going to use magic, so that she would be prepared and not be scared by a sudden action, because magical powers can always be unpredictable. When he cast the spell, the ring the lady wore instantly worked, activating a powerful defense and creating a barrier that protected her from magical influence. The magic aimed at Stefania was reflected back and forcefully pushed back, returning straight to Yuchi as if the spell could not harm the one protected by the ring. Yuchi noted that this result was quite good and showed that the mistress's magic really had good power and was able to effectively repel attacks. Stefania wasted no time in rushing over to Yuchi to make sure he was okay after the spell returned to him, and he only smiled slightly, assuring her that everything was fine. The guy didn't expect his own spell to come back so easily, and this unexpected effect surprised him a little. But at the same time, he didn't feel any threat. The shield created by the ring not only protected Stefania, but also amplified any magic, reflecting it back, with greater power, turning every attack against her into a counterattack. This magical gift was truly valuable, and now Stefania could be sure that even if someone decided to attack her, the ring and Master Chenil would provide her with reliable protection. Yuchi thought that they were talking about Magdalena. He was sure that they were talking about her, and he thought that this was important information for everyone who knew about the situation. The lady confirmed his words, and Yuchi said that they were now at home. He said that Magdalena would probably come to see her in person soon to clarify the situation. Stefania couldn't understand why Yuchi was saying that, and decided to ask him about the meaning of his words to avoid any misunderstandings. Yuchi explained that the master had punished Magdalena quite severely yesterday, and that the punishment had been noticeably serious, although he did not give any details. Stefania was surprised and asked if Magdalena's punishment was the same as Elliot's, to compare the severity. Yuchi replied that he did not think the punishment was as harsh, but made it clear that Magdalena had also suffered greatly, and she certainly did not like it. Yesterday, Magdalena quickly ran into her room and immediately closed the door, as if trying to hide from the whole world and experience what happened alone. She did not understand why she had received such treatment, and was confused trying to figure out what exactly deserved such punishment. Then Elliot appeared in her room and said that apparently she also felt the master's anger and realized how strict and unyielding he was. She had not expected to see him there at Vika's, and was surprised that he was sitting quietly on the table as if nothing unusual was happening. Elliot asked her not to look at him with such anger, explaining that she was mistaken in her feelings towards him at that moment. He admitted that he simply felt sorry for her because they were in the same situation and were essentially sailing in the same boat, sharing common difficulties. To show the seriousness of his words, he demonstrated that he was missing an arm as a reminder of the trials he had gone through. Magdalena was completely horrified, not believing her ears, and immediately asked if the gentleman had really done this, because such actions were unexpected and contrary to all her expectations. Elliot confirmed Magdalene's words, noting that she was luckier than he was, because he found himself in a much more difficult situation than she could have imagined. In fact, Elliot could have gotten his hand back, but now it was in the hands of that little rascal who wasn't going to give it back until he restored order in the castle, completely obeying the established rules. Magdalena immediately understood that they were talking about a Yuchi, a young but very strong magician who was already showing his character and was not going to simply give in or obey without conditions. Elliot noticed that, for some strange reason, this little guy had become protective of ordinary people, which was completely untypical for wizards, who usually kept to themselves and rarely interfered in the affairs of mere mortals. Yuchi is the best magician after Master Chenil Crowley himself, his right hand, and the only one recognized by the master, despite his young age and lack of desire to rule the lands. Although Yuchi does not like to manage the central lands, he still helps to control order in the castle and support the lord, which makes him an indispensable and important person. Magdalena couldn't understand how anyone could take such changes calmly, and why everyone around her seemed to take his side, leaving her isolated and confused about what was happening. She decided to ask if Elliot was really happy with the fact that an ordinary person, a simple Norm, had found himself so close to Mr. Crowley and received such trust from him. Elliot replied that he was ready to give her valuable advice. If she valued her own life, it was better not to mess with this Norm, because the consequences could be much more serious than it seemed at first glance. After that, he stood up and said goodbye to her, leaving the girl in great irritation and anger. She could not come to terms with what had happened, and was seething with indignation, experiencing deep disappointment. Hot-tempered and unrestrained, she began to hit the floor with her hand, splashing out the pent-up rage. He realized that this would not end so easily, and she would definitely not leave the situation without consequences. Punishment from the master meant serious problems. Magdalena could be seriously hurt or end up in a serious condition because of this. Everyone understood that the consequences could be unpredictable. To be honest, he himself was worried, but Xinye could be very cruel. He didn't want anyone to get hurt too much. Yuchi reassured him, saying that everything would be fine because Magdalena had only done something wrong once. At that moment, several guys approached them and asked curiously what they were talking about so animatedly and why such serious conversations were taking place in their presence. Yuchi replied that they were discussing a stupid girl, and it immediately became clear that they were talking about Magdalena because no one else in their circle evoked such emotions. One of the guys noted that he now understood why the master had cast a magical spell on the wedding ring. It was a clever and thoughtful move that immediately commanded respect. All this was done to protect his bride from Magdalena because the master was a very smart and prudent man who thought through all the options in advance. Now the master had a bride, and Magdalena had to come to terms with this fact, even if she didn't like it at all, and it caused her pain. To prove his love and provide protection to his beloved, the master made this wonderful ring, an example of true romance and care, which amazed everyone around. She couldn't understand why this particular ring had such a strong effect on her body and well-being. It seemed to have a will of its own, changing her physical state for no apparent reason. There was no doubt. The magic cast on the ring was very powerful and dangerous. She needed to learn as much information about it as possible and never take it off to avoid serious consequences. That girl who had committed yesterday's reckless act should have been severely punished, but no one knew what was happening to her now. Her fate remained a mystery to everyone. The boys were surprised that some incidents had already happened near them, and they became interested in what exactly happened the first time she did something wrong. So far, this was only the first case, so they treated her relatively gently without using too harsh measures and hoping that it would not happen again. Stefania noticed that Yuchi mentioned this incident, and she wondered what exactly this first time meant for the wizards in the tower. Then they explained to her that each magician in the tower has only one chance to make a mistake before the master, and if the failure is repeated, then a terrible and irreversible fate awaits. Stefania admitted that such a punishment system is very serious, and Yuchi noted that it is this strict discipline that helps keep everyone under control and maintain order in the castle. The second time, the wizard will not die, but judging from Elliot's experience, the punishment for breaking the law will certainly be very severe and heavy. It will definitely not be an easy test for him. Now Magdalena got off with just a fright, but if she continues her actions, she will be to blame for the consequences. She knows well what awaits those who manage to anger Master Xinye. The lady was of course surprised, because everyone is given the right to make mistakes. However, Magdalena is clearly not distinguished by her special intelligence and insight, which often leads her to problems. Therefore, Magdalena advises Mrs. Stefania to always be on guard and careful. In the original story, Magdalena suffered from jealousy, and now she had to face this dark side in its most cruel form. You need to be very careful and attentive. Otherwise, this may cause a serious problem that will be difficult to solve or prevent. The guy approached another and reported some kind of magical request that they urgently needed to discuss or fulfill, which immediately attracted the attention of the interlocutor. After that, he suddenly remembered that he had completely forgotten about the time and warned that it was time for them to get down to business, otherwise they might be late. Yuchi asked what had happened to them this time, wanting to understand the situation and help if needed, because he always has his finger on the pulse. They were told that there was monster killing planned for today, and it was an important task that could not be postponed or ignored. Yuchi realized the seriousness of the situation and noted that they really needed to hurry in order to complete the mission on time and without any problems. They quickly took off, because monsters themselves are quite stubborn and like to act without thinking, as if they live their own lives, not paying attention to others. Before parting, Yuchi wished the boys good luck, sincerely hoping that they would be able to cope with the upcoming trials, because there were unknown and dangerous events ahead. Yuchi explained that of all the inhabitants of the castle, these four were some of the most normal, so if the main mage was not around, she could always count on their help in a difficult situation. Stefania thought for a moment, considering what she had heard, while the boy noted that it was time for him to return to the castle, as important matters and responsibilities awaited him there. His words left her a little confused, especially when he said that these guys were relatively normal, leaving room for doubt and raising questions about who else actually lived in the castle. She remembered Yuchi mentioning that the mage would issue requests based on their difficulty and the mage's strength, and it always depended on the level of the trial that needed to be passed to complete the task. Curious, Stefania asked if Yuchi received any requests, as this could show how seriously he took his role and what tasks he was entrusted with. Yuchi replied that requests were indeed received regularly, especially for evaluation and analysis of various items, since he had well-developed analytical magic, which helped him find details hidden from others. When she heard about analytical magic, the girl was surprised, because she did not expect that magic could be so subtle and complex, and not just destructive or protective as she imagined. Thanks to his ability, Yuchi was able to determine that it was her blood that was in the bucket of water, which proved that he was not a simple wizard. He notices the smallest details in everything that surrounds him and knows how to use them for his own purposes. He could explain who planted these plants in this place, and when, although for an ordinary person, it would remain a mystery. His knowledge seemed incredibly deep and precise. Touching the flower, he noted that most wizards would not be able to answer such questions because their magic was limited in understanding. For him, it was as natural as breathing air. He perceived such things without effort, as if they were a part of himself. It was hard to believe that his magic couldn't cover everything around him and see absolutely everything, because it seemed that he knew even the impossible. Yuchi noted that even such a powerful magician still had mysteries that could not be analyzed or understood with magic. In passing, he asked the girl if she wanted to see how magical requests were actually carried out, since this was a rare opportunity. Just then, one such request came to him, although its execution was scheduled for tomorrow, which did not allow him to wait long. The girl replied that if she were allowed to take part, she would be happy to see this process and try to help. Yuchi said that their trip to the northern lands was planned for only a week later, and reminded her that she wanted to find a job to earn money. If Stefania helped with the magical request, he promised to pay her, which was tempting, although it was not quite the job she had imagined. She smiled and admitted that she was not sure how she could be of use to the wizard, but if he insisted, she would be happy to go with him. Yuchi was delighted, and they quickly agreed that tomorrow they would go to the western lands, where a new adventure and test awaited. The guy suddenly remembered that he still had things to do in the castle that couldn't be put off. He wondered if it would be a problem to leave the girl alone, and decided to ask her how she felt about it. The girl calmly replied that there was nothing to worry about. She was quite independent, and if anything happened, she would go to her room herself, so there was no need to look after her at all. She also mentioned that she has a ring with her that belongs to the master, so she is protected, and everything is under control if anything happens. Yuchi smiled and said that it was time for him to go then. He decided that there was no point in staying any longer, and that he would definitely return. He admitted that he was sad to leave the girl alone, but business in the castle required his presence, and there was no time to think. At the same time, he asked that, in case of unforeseen situations, she be sure to call him, because he is always ready to help. The girl smiled back and promised that she would definitely call him if needed, which eased his anxiety a little. In the sky above a mysterious and uncertain country, there was a master immersed in his thoughts and plans far from earthly concerns. Yuchi headed towards him, assuming that the master was busy studying the migration of dangerous monsters in order to better understand the situation around him. Yuchi asked about the progress of the work, but the master replied in surprise that he did not understand why he came here and what exactly he was doing in this place. Yuchi, as the caretaker of the castle, considered it his duty to report to the master about important events that concerned not only everyday affairs, but also the personal life of the master himself. This information concerned his fiancée, and that is why the master immediately paid close attention to him, realizing that the conversation would be serious and significant. Yuchi noted that his bride was behaving unusually, as if she was hiding something important that had remained hidden even from those close to her until that moment. She had previously said that she had been trained by a wizard, and this detail made Yuchi even more suspicious and question her true intentions. Yuchi reminded the master that he himself had probably noticed oddities in her behavior that could indicate something more than just ordinary mood swings. Perhaps the master himself has already paid attention to details that did not seem important before, but now acquired a completely different meaning. Despite everything, the master did not give an answer, and Yuchi noted that he would not be able to monitor her actions and behavior forever, since this was beyond the scope of his duties. After all, in his opinion, the girl needed the master's attention, and only he could understand what exactly was going on in her soul and thoughts. The master could not understand why such tension had arisen, and his indifference caused Yuchi to become dissatisfied and irritated. The guy asked directly if the master wanted to say that he himself knew nothing about his bride, as if hiding the truth or refusing to accept reality. After all, even the master himself seemed to know nothing about the one who was to become his companion, and this gave rise to many new questions and doubts. The master asked again what exactly Yuchi meant, trying to clarify the situation and understand how serious the suspicions that had been expressed were. The boy decided that it was better for him to sort out the situation himself and talk to his fiancée than to rely on others. The master, noticing his doubts, asked him directly if he wanted to risk dying because of this. But the guy didn't argue and quickly said goodbye, saying that the girl was already returning to the castle. His words sounded confident, as if he had decided not to get into further details and trust what was happening. It seemed that the master really didn't notice that something was wrong with Stefania. Perhaps he didn't notice her nervousness or the hidden anxiety that was visible to those around her. This morning, the master came to see her before breakfast. It was a usual meeting, but this time there was a certain tension between them that no one could explain right away. He knocked on the door, and when she came out, he greeted her good morning. On the outside, everything looked calm, but inside they both had a feeling that the day would be special and difficult. The master asked if she had slept well. Stefania replied that everything was fine, and she felt great trying to hide her fatigue and inner worries. The guy noticed that the scratch on her hand had almost completely healed, although it seemed to him that it disappeared too quickly. This made him wary, but he did not raise unnecessary questions. The girl apologized for making him worry and be concerned about herself. Her voice was soft, but her words were filled with genuine concern about her condition. However, the guy said that everything was fine, and what was more important was what he saw on her face. She clearly hadn't slept well and looked tired. This bothered him much more than the healed wound. He noticed the dark circles under her eyes and told her so directly it was a confirmation that she had had a hard and restless night, even though she tried to appear calm. Stefania admitted that yesterday had simply been a very busy day, and she had not yet fully recovered. Her words sounded tired, as if her strength was truly running out. The guy advised her that maybe she should rest more today, so as not to exhaust herself. He was sincerely worried and wanted her to take a break for the sake of her health. The girl said that everything was fine with her. There was no need to worry, although this was not entirely true. She tried not to show her weakness and assured that she could cope on her own without outside help. The guy wondered if he should even tell the master about the situation, because he could get very worried or even interfere, disrupting the plans. He wasn't sure what to do and what reaction to expect. After they said goodbye to Yuchi, Stefania headed to her room. She was tired, but in her mind, she was already preparing for the next steps, trying to think through all the details and decisions. At the last moment before the door, she remembered that she had forgotten something important. This moment made her turn sharply and go back so as not to miss the opportunity to solve the pressing issue. She absolutely had to talk to Lucy. The girl felt that she could help her understand the situation, and perhaps even tell her important information that Stefania didn't yet know. If Lucy really knew about her condition, she might have already told the gentleman. This could change a lot, and Stefania was worried that the secret would come out prematurely. Yuchi didn't know anything yet, so Lucy didn't tell anyone. This gave a little hope of keeping the secret and being able to control the situation herself. She walked towards the workshop and found the corridor was crowded. There was little space, and the crowd made it difficult to move freely, but Stefania confidently made her way to the right door. On the way, someone suddenly stopped her. When she looked up, she was shocked to see Magdalena in front of her, which caused her great shock and mixed feelings. Stefania immediately apologized, but Magdalena stood in front of her, looking calm and not showing a drop of aggression. This was surprising and made the heroine wary. She was very scared because she expected to meet anyone, but her fear and misunderstanding overwhelmed her because her relationship with Magdalena was complicated. Magdalena simply smiled and nodded her head in Stefania's direction. Her calm and kindness seemed unusual, as if she wanted to start over from scratch. She noted that she was surprised and even glad that she was able to meet her in person despite all the previous difficulties and misunderstandings between them. Magdalena wanted to apologize for her behavior last time. She realized that she had behaved inappropriately and had caused pain, so she wanted to make things right. Stefania was stunned, not expecting such a confession. Magdalena noticed that her actions were disgusting, and even she herself regretted the words she had said. She said a lot of nasty things and caused pain, including physical pain, damaging Stefania's face. These words sounded sincere, which was unexpected and confusing. Magdalena truly respected and honored Stefania, which was shown in her regrets and desire to make amends to her. Stefania was completely confused and couldn't understand what was going on. It all seemed like some kind of strange performance or game that she didn't want to get involved in. However, Magdalena noted that Stefania herself probably began to understand the true feelings and reasons for what was happening between them. In her opinion, Stefania has sympathy for Mr. Crowley, but since the choice fell on her, Magdalena wanted to get to know her better in order to understand the situation more deeply. She vowed that she would no longer interfere with the relationship and would not become a hindrance to the master, showing respect and a desire to leave the past behind. Stefania didn't understand what was happening and didn't believe a word Magdalena said. It seemed too strange to be true, but she decided to listen further. Perhaps the punishment Magdalena received was so severe that it forced her to reconsider her views and behavior. Magdalena reminded that Stefania had recently become the master's fiancée, and this circumstance changes a lot in their relationship and future. She thought that Stefania was attracted by the gentleman's appearance and did not judge her choice, understanding that feelings can be different and complex. Magdalena had known the master for a long time and could tell Stefania a lot about him, revealing unexpected details and features of his character. Then Stefania realized that everything became clear to her. Magdalena had not changed. She was just now trying to play her role and play a game with her. She decided to try to play this game, realizing that there was no other way, and accepted the challenge to understand the true motives of her opponent. Stefania expressed gratitude for the help, without being angry with Magdalena. On the contrary, she appreciated the misunderstanding that brought them closer. Thanks to this situation, she became closer to the gentleman and realized that it was this misunderstanding that led to their rapprochement. Magdalena asked again what exactly was meant, and Stefania explained that the gentleman had made the ring especially for her, which had a deep meaning. The ring was worn on the left hand and was sealed with powerful magic, making it more than just jewelry, but a symbol of a special connection. This ring contained feelings that Stefania could only dream of experiencing, and it symbolized her special place in the life of the master. Stefania noted that the stone in the ring was the color of Mr. Chenyel's eyes, which gave the jewelry even more significance and beauty. She was grateful for this tender and touching gesture, which meant much more to her than just a piece of jewelry. Despite this, Stefania felt that Magdalena knew much more about the gentleman than she did, and this aroused curiosity. Lady Magdalena spent much more time with the gentleman than Stefania, and could tell many interesting stories and details. Stefania would have been happy to listen to Magdalena's stories, because she herself was an ordinary person, and could not understand all the subtleties of the wizard's mind. Since she had become his fiancée, she wanted to know more about him, and was ready to rely on the information she could get from Magdalena. Magdalena happily agreed to help and support Stefania, after which they shook hands, confirming their mutual agreement. Thus, a kind of agreement was concluded between them, and both understood that the mood was serious, and each was ready to play by their own rules.